you have this fear, and that's one thing I don't want to get emotional, but I think people have a fear of leaving because you give up so much to be there, that maybe they feel like, where am I going to go? Is my family going to, accept me? I've hurt so many people by, pushing them to the side. Maybe, I can't leave this place, or even I feel like some people don't want to leave because they have this sense of pride, like, dang, like I went against my own family for years telling them, no, this is the truth. And now I'm going to look so stupid coming back saying, oh, actually, it's not the truth. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that kind of may hold people. But I feel like I'm so thankful that my family just, like, accepted me back. Like, they were waiting for me to come back.
Well, welcome back, everybody, and thanks for joining us again today. We are interviewing Tiffany, a former member of the World Mission Society Church of God, and I know very little about Tiffany's story or background, and so I'm excited to hear her experiences and how she joined, how she got out, and all of that. And we're also joined by Cory, another former member who, if you've watched her interview that's on our channel, we did, well, it's been, I don't know, maybe, how long has it been now, Cory?
I think like not 8 months since.
Yeah,
then.
so it's been up for a while, so most of you are probably familiar with Cory, but Cory and Tiffany have a bit of a connection, and so another thing that I'm not familiar with how, what their connection is. But that's kind of why Cory's going to kind of co-host this with me and ask some questions that I think will be better than some of the questions I could come up with. And so, Cory and Tiffany, welcome. And thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
So let's just start with kind of your guys' background together. And Cory, if maybe you could kind of touch on what your connection is and how your stories, I guess, kind of intertwine.
Yeah. So, Tiffany, well, I was in New Windsor, a little bit before Tiffany, and then she had moved from Ridgewood, to be on the graphics department. Like, New Windsor's one of those, it's like the headquarters, and they kind of poach all the people that have any other talents or abilities outside of just like regular preaching, so that they can come and work on things in the back end, like on the tech team or the multimedia department is what it's called nowadays. And so Tiff got transferred over, and then we ended up living together. So she's one of my many roommates over the years, which Tiff's had a lot of roommates too. But this is a really special moment for me too, because she was probably the only one of the very few in there that I could have said was like a real friend. Like, you're not really allowed to get super close to people. You're not really allowed to have friends. You're not allowed to hang out. Any kind of worldly talk that has nothing to do with the gospel work is like frowned upon. You will get corrected right in front of whoever if you're talking worldly things. But we really clicked on a genuine level, and we became like real friends, and we would hang out. Eventually, when we got a little rebellious, we'd even sneak off to go like see a movie.
Right. And not simple normal things that were like, so illegal right now.
Yeah, it was illegal. Like, one time we called off work and went to a water park in the middle of the day, which is, you're really not allowed to do that at all. But we would do stuff like that. And she's actually one that I personally mentioned in my story. I didn't use her name at the time because she was still in. And because I actually, one of my biggest fears of speaking out at the first time when I first did a video with you, Jordan, was that I was officially going to lose her as a friend.
Stop. I'm going to cry.
Yeah.
I'm like trying to hold back tears.
Yeah, no, I really am to think about it again. I was like,
I think I remember you mentioning her. Yeah, I think I know which part of your story that was. Yeah.
Yeah, because she was like the only one that was really there for me when they really shunned me. So when I knew that when I started speaking out that she's never going to speak to me again. She's going to hate me. I'm going to lose my only friend from that place. So the fact that she's out now and that we're still best friends, like we still talk every single day. It's just like it's something that came out of it that I'm really grateful for, and for her to kind of have that full circle moment with me is a huge encouragement thing that I kind of wanted to share for other people when they think about like their loved ones or somebody who's still stuck in there, or they've been in there for years, or you get that nervousness of like, if I share my story, if I leave, they're gonna hate me, they're not gonna speak to me, I'm gonna lose this sense of community. And you will at first, because they're not allowed to talk to people who leave. But it comes full circle. So it's like statistically, people leave cults. So eventually, if they're your real friends, they'll come back. And that was what happened for us. So
yeah, I'm thankful for that. And that's something that kept me in for even longer too, was not even just, even like you speaking out is like, definitely you're going to get shunned, right? But you get shunned even for just leaving or losing faith. Like, you know, if you like don't come for one service, or like start to lose faith in their eyes, like you lose people. And I had people that I thought, like, you know, aside from Cory, because Cory I knew I had like a deeper connection with, but there were other people that I really considered my best friends at the time. You know, some of them even did like some of the little rebellious stuff with us, you know, like, so you really felt like this genuine connection. And I would even text my mom, who's like not in the church, and I would be like, I'm gonna lose these people if I leave. And if you can imagine, I mean, I was in there for 11 years, my entire young adult life. You know, I started when I was 19 years old and I came out at 31 years old. So it's like, that's all you knew. You let go of your friends, you let go of your family for these people. And I was texting my mom, like, Mom, I think I want to leave the church, you know? And then I told her, that was one of the things I told her, like, I'm going to lose my friends. Like, I really love and care for some of these people. And my mom was like, if they're really your friends, like, that shouldn't matter. You know, like, she obviously doesn't understand the cult world, but, you know, she said that shouldn't matter. And, you know, so I'm also so thankful to have somebody like Cory and, like, you know, even a couple of other, like, we have another little bestie. She knows who she is if she watches this video. Like, we literally speak every day. And it's like, there's such an important relationship to have, because nobody knows, like, or understands what we went through. So it's good to have, like, this connection in the real world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Cory, you talking about full circle moments, and I feel like that's a good encouragement for people. You know, there's just a variety of people that listen to these interviews, I know, and some that have people stuck in there. Some that are, you know, probably like your mom, that is not familiar with the cult world, but has somebody that is trapped inside either the WMS or another cult, and they're, you know, one of the primary questions that they ask is, you know, what do I do to get them out? And so people are coming to these videos looking for, you know, those sort of answers, but I think also just some reassurance and hope. So hopefully, you know, this story can be another one that gives some of that hope. And we've seen a lot of full circle moments. I mean, I think about Edgar, who, you know, several years ago, came on and was debating us, you know, in some of our live shows, debating us as a member. And now he's, you know, one of the ones who helps us make videos very often. So yeah, there's definitely hope. But so Cory, when you did your interview, then it sounds like Tiffany, you were still in. And so it's been sort of a recent thing that you've gotten out. When was it that you left officially?
I guess when you filmed it, that was still in, but I think by the time it released, I was finally out.
Yeah, it happened shortly after.
Yeah, like it's kind of crazy because our stories are like so like almost like interwoven, you know? And one of the reasons I definitely wanted to get my story out there too was because a lot of people within the church, and it's like, honestly, you shouldn't care so much, like what they say, what they think, right? But like so many people within the church, because Cory really started like this movement kind of really like, you know, not just her obviously, but she's we would consider like a big name in the church, at least in the East Coast. You know, like a lot of people knew her. So seeing her leave, seeing her speak out, like a lot of people left because of that. But at the same time, like at the same exact time, so many people that were in the same boat as us, where you were there for 10 plus years, were just kind of like losing this, right, faith, quote unquote, right? So it's like everybody in the church thinks that I left because Cory took me out. That's one of the things that it's like, we're going to put this to rest, right? Because they swore, like, and the only reason I would even
called her.
Yeah, they think like, oh wow, like, you know, because we were so close even within the church. But it was really insane because honestly, they really hid the fact that Cory left the church, first of all. They hid that from me specifically, and they also hid the fact that she was speaking out. Like, I literally like found out on my own in the craziest way. And the reason why I would even want to clear that up is because they think that that's what you do when you leave. That, of course, like, speaking out is to help people leave, but it's not like you're like this, like, you know, in their eyes, this little demon that's going and grabbing their angelic members that, you know, are on the road to salvation, and you're leading them to hell, you know, like they paint you to be that kind of person. And literally Cory, like, I was texting her, like, I knew that she was like losing faith already. Like, I knew she wasn't really like, you know, living that gospel life that we used to live before. I knew that, but like, I still loved her so much that I was like, I'm not going to let that intervene, like the way that I speak to her, my connection to her, you know. I'm just going to be there for her and pray for her, right? Because, you know, I was still very much believed faith-wise, so I wanted her to not die spiritually. But I knew that I still like loved her very much, you know, like, and I was told at some point, me and another friend that we thought we were close to, right, at the time, like, they literally told us, like, yeah, like, Cory's not doing so well, or Cory, like, you know, didn't keep the feast or whatever, you know. And they told us, like, if I were you, I would stop texting her, you know, I would stop talking to her. And that was something that I, on my own, decided to keep doing. Like, I still wanted to text her because I was like, why would I not talk to her, you know, like she's not doing anything wrong, you know. She wasn't even, I don't think she was speaking out at that time either. So I would just text her every day, and it was literally like simple things like memes and like just like talking about like little life things. Like, we were just being normal, you know what I mean? And so even at some point it was revealed that Cory was speaking out. I was even giving her hints because, you know, I lived in New Windsor, New York at the time, and she lived in Jersey. I was originally from Jersey. So I had it in my heart that something was wrong with me in New Windsor. My cat is making an appearance.
It's all right. We're used to cats making appearances.
Yeah. She's been through the cult life with me, so she used to be Cory's roommate too.
Another ex-member right there.
Yeah, ex-member Ronnie. Poor Ronnie. She never saw a TV before she left the church.
Maybe we can get Ronnie on next to do an interview, share her side of the story.
Yeah. But yeah, so I was in New York, away from my family, and if anyone knows me, I've always been super close to my family and tried to really keep that connection even while I was in the cult. So I started to really feel like I got to get out of here, like this church location specifically. Like, I wasn't planning to leave the church completely, but I wanted to go back to Jersey and kind of just take a step back from like that intense gospel life that I was living. Because I was in the multimedia department, which Cory was also in. And we were literally like, it was like you had your full-time job in the world, and the church was your second full-time job. Like, it was all night, and it was 7 days a week. You know what I mean? So you're really burnt out half the time, or all the time. Like, you don't have time for yourself. Like, you barely have time for like your own physical goals. You know what I mean? If you wanted to go to the gym, you'd better go at like 1 o'clock in the morning after you finished your work, you know, stuff like that. So I was just feeling like I miss my family. So I was like, I need to go back to Jersey at least, you know, and just take a step back from this intense gospel life. So I'll start to text Cory like these little hints, like, yeah, like, I'm trying to get a job in New York City and then make my way to Jersey, like live in Jersey. And she wasn't ever saying anything like, oh, I left that church, like, you should just leave. Like, or they're a cult. Like, she never tried to take me out of the church. And I appreciate that so much more because who knows where that would have led our relationship, you know, because I still was very much battling my inner faith with this place, you know. So if I would have known that she like felt that way about the church, like that it was a cult and all these things at the time, I probably would have like regressed a little bit and like, whoa, that's crazy, you know. Like I would have like been a little scared because that's what they do to you, you know. Like you're scared.
You would have put your defenses up, your programmed defenses.
Yeah, my walls would have totally gone up, and yeah, I would have just like separated myself from her. So she never did that. So that's one of the reasons why, the only reason really I would want to even clear up that the fact that she wasn't the one who took me out of the church, because they like to paint you in this picture that is not at all what you were doing. And I was like, even when they finally told me that Cory was posting stuff online, I couldn't believe it because I was still very much in the cult mindset. And I was like, that's impossible, because I've been texting her. Like, I've been having regular conversations, and Cory knows that I'm like this devoted member. Like, she hasn't been telling me anything, you know. Like, I was like, that's impossible, because what you know of a slanderer, right? Once you're labeled a slanderer, you think like, you know, they're the worst. They're these evil people that are trying to get you out of the church and that are saying all these things that are not true. And that's one of the things that really, really woke me up too, I would say. I think when I left, or when I started to read Cory's Instagram page, it was the first time that I realized the actual definition of slander. And it's not like I didn't know the definition of slander. I knew that definition of slander, but because I was in the church for so long, I always regarded the word slander with their definition of what slander is. Their definition of slander is literally just you speaking anything about the church. It's not lies about the church, right? Even if you're saying truth about the church, they're going to label it slander. So anything, it was so funny. Yeah, anything. So I was actually struggling with my faith for like a year at this point. And it was funny because why I say mine and Cory's stories kind of intertwined is because I was kind of there for her during that time where she was shunned. And then, you know, when she started to kind of what they call start to lose faith, right? She was starting to kind of enjoy her life out in the world, which to us is like the saddest thing you could possibly do, right? Like, it's like, oh no, like we lost her. And I'm like, you know, like I cried so much for Cory inside that church. Like I literally cried and sobbed for her because like just out of concern for her like salvation, you know what I mean? Like yeah. That's how much I like loved her physically and like, you know, spiritually. Like I really felt like you going to the world was like destruction, you know? So, but I was battling my own faith at the time too. You know, my story is like much more complicated because I feel like I even started, something about the church made me start to want to just even deconstruct like Christianity itself. So I really didn't come to terms with the church being a cult like right away. You know, I was more feeling like I was looking around like, if this is really the one place that we're supposed to be saved, if this is the one truth that's supposed to bring us to salvation, like I was just kind of looking around at all the members like, this can't possibly be it. You know what I mean? Like, if this is the one truth, how come more people don't come, right? Or how come more like, and I'm going to be so careful with my words because I really don't want to hurt anyone's like feelings, but like the quality of people I started to notice, because in the East Coast where me and Cory were from, and you know, our leader, I don't know if we can mention names, right? I don't know if he's been mentioned in the past, Daniel Lee. Daniel Lee. He's so different. Like, you would really praise this man in the Church of God because he was just different. And realizing now, and even I realized this when I was fully cult-minded too, was he's a businessman. So he led the East Coast in such a different way where I really, really feel like we didn't realize we were in a cult like because of him. Because we would literally look at other churches of God in other regions and we'd be like, oh my God, like this is why people say we're in a cult, because look at you guys. Like, you know, like we would literally say stuff like that. Like on the East Coast, we really thought we were like the best of the best because we were just so different because of the way that Daniel Lee's leadership is, you know. Sorry, you may have to bring me on track sometimes because I tend to like go all over the place.
No, but anyways, this is all very interesting.
Yeah. So why were we even talking about this? Oh, so that's what I mean. I get like so off track. But okay,
The
so
things you
Daniel,
started to notice.
the
It was
things
the
I
things
started to notice.
you. Mhm.
Yeah. So, okay, so his style of leadership, the quality of people, that's what I was going with. Like, so we started to get visitors, right? Because the Church of God in New Windsor has this exhibition, which is like a museum that they built. Cory had a big part of that. And, we upkeep it, and it's like this, it's called the Last Reformation exhibition, and it's like the history of like the early Christianity into how Christ Ahnsahnghong reformed everything. Like, it's just this big production of a museum,
Yeah.
that other churches started to visit New Windsor for this, like California, the Midwest, the Southwest, like everyone around the USA, which this is a big deal because honestly, the General Assembly, they never really let the churches intertwine like that. You're very much like contained within your region. So this is the first time that you're able to just have these other churches come and visit your church. And us, being the main church on the East Coast, it was such a big deal. So we would literally have visiting trips. And I would see the people coming from these other churches, and I'm just like, like, it was so different from the people that we had. Like, with Daniel Lee's leadership, he was so specific about the type of people you would preach to. And I mean, like, even as far as like superficial things, like the way they look, how they present themselves, the jobs that they had. Like, he really, really, because he's such a businessman, he really prided himself in like having the best of the best, even when it came to like membership. You know what I
It
mean?
was all about image.
He didn't, yeah, it's all about image in the East Coast. He didn't want you preaching to like someone who was overweight, like, and I say that as an overweight woman myself. Like, he didn't want you like preaching to like, too many people of color. You know what I mean? Like, it was like the best thing in the world if you brought a white person to the church. And it was something that we called honor and glory fruit, which is like fruit that was like so valuable, like so beautiful, or like had just great job, like all these things, and I started to realize,
For
wow,
those who might be really quick, for those who might
yeah,
be coming in for the first time, we have some cult lingo.
cult lingo.
A fruit is a person preaching to. So it's like the how Christ is the vine and we are the branches, and then we're supposed to bear fruit. That's where that terminology comes from.
Yeah. So yeah, we would preach to, like, we were very careful about who we preached to on the East Coast, and he was all about image. So when I saw these people coming, I'm like, wow. I started to realize that, wow, we're really the only ones who do care about image. Like, like I just started to see like, like that, it just made me feel like something about this church is not fitting. Like, clearly they're preaching to people, and I'll say this, I'm sorry, you can cut this out. This like so not good to say, but it's like they're preaching to people who are easy to receive this. Because as you know, like something deep down inside, every member knows that this truth is something that is not easy to accept, right? That is why they try all these other ways to get people to come, right? They try, I'm saying, when I say they, I'm really, right, basing my experience off the East Coast, because we really did things so differently. Like, we were big on events. We were big on seminars. We were big on just like beautiful productions, things that attracted, right, those honor and glory fruit. Like, they didn't want you preaching to randos on the ghetto streets. You know what I mean? Like, they would even call some of people's fruits like ghetto fruit. Like, like we were very specific of our preaching methods as well on the East Coast.
So when you say people that would easily receive it, just in terms of like, I mean, what I think of is like susceptible people that might be, easy to take advantage of for a variety of reasons, whether that's because they're very young or they're just in a stage of life where they're more susceptible to, the love bombing and all that. Is that kind of what you're meaning there?
That's exactly what it is. Like, easily manipulated, right? I would never have used that word while I was a member, right? While I was noticing those things, but I saw it because to us, we knew what those fruits that were hard to get were, right? Like, people with like,
Money.
really like, yeah,
Money,
thank you.
yeah.
I'm just like, I'm so trying to be
No,
correct
it's
with what I
true.
say.
So it's like, and correct me. I'm gonna piggyback a little bit here, Tiff.
Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong in what you're saying. So on the West Coast, it seems like they kind of go for just kind of anybody who will listen. Anybody at all, doesn't matter status, doesn't matter anything. Just the numbers. They just want the numbers.
Yeah.
So like, you'll hear like Colorado bears like 800 fruit, and it's just a bunch of people off the street that
like home, like sometimes they were like home, like we would like find out these things that were like, oh, they're homeless, or like people
we're on the
off the
East
street.
Coast.
It's like unacceptable to do that.
Sorry.
Yeah.
On the East Coast, there's these tactics that they do to really like it's deceitful. It's a deceitful form of recruitment where you have to build up this big huge event in order to get the person that you can't necessarily just stop on the street because they're an executive, have money, this and that. That's why they use things like "We love you," and like Tiff, I know you did a lot of work with "We love you" too. So there's a lot of different.
Yeah, there's just like so many different ways, that we did it. And so I saw these people coming, and I'm like, and we would get videos, like these video messages from churches around the world, and you would see, like, for lack of a better word, right, we would see like these poor people coming, and it was like in these third world countries where it's like, of course they're gonna believe this, like, you know what I mean, like they're not hard to get them to join, is what I mean. And like, so I started to feel like, if this is the truth, like, everyone should be able to come. It shouldn't be that hard to get executives to come to the church. It shouldn't be that hard to get white fruit, like it should be like, of course. But the thing is that and like I said, right, I'm always like, in my head, I still very much have like a cult mind where it's like, I know exactly how they'll countermeasure this. Like, well, it's the truth isn't for everybody, because there's that verse, right, that like, very like, enter through the narrow gate. Like, they have a verse for everything, and that's what really even kept us right in there for so long. It's like, like, the truth is not supposed to be an easy thing to receive. Look at Jesus and the disciples, like, like they lost their life for the gospel, like, for believing in Christ. Like, they always had like this biblical parallel, so you're like, oh, this is normal, like this is supposed to happen. But I just started to feel like, no, it's not right, because maybe this could have happened in our early church days, right? Because we always had like our parallel to the early Christian church of Jesus Christ. So it's like, at the beginning you preach to everybody and everybody comes, but then throughout the years, then you preach to like the higher level people, and then the church grows into this big magnificent thing. So I start to feel like, we really preach about the end a lot, and it's really feeling like the end is near. So it's like, if we're so close to the end, then a lot more people should be coming to the church, and a lot more high quality people should be coming to church. And when I started to see all these visitors come, and you also get these video messages from churches around the world of the Church of God, and I'm like, wow, like really, it feels like only the East Coast is the one getting these other types of people to come, like the high level people to come. And it's not even in the hugest amount of numbers, if you know what I mean. Like, it's not like that's the only type of people we brought to the church. Absolutely not. Even they were hard to get on the East Coast, And when they did come, they're the ones you're going to see on videos. They're the ones you're going to see being treated like gold, because Daniel Lee does not want them to leave the church, because he's so like careful about image, and he wants those kind of people to stay, So that was one thing that I started to notice. I also started to just notice the way that the church was run like a business. And it was funny because, as you mentioned, right, Cory, like in the West Coast, that they just preach to anybody. When you're like in the early years of your faith, you think that's like the most beautiful thing in the world. And even that's why what makes East Coast so different is that at some point they changed their mind into that business mind, right, that Pastor Daniel Lee has. Because in the beginning, when you first come to the church, you really think it's the place of salvation. Like, you really think everyone needs to come to this church. So you do want to preach to everybody. You want to preach to that homeless person. You want to preach to that, person who needs to change their life around, like a drug addict or something. Like, you want to do that, because even that's things that you see in other Christian churches, like, people who like change their life around, right, for Christ and all these things. So you have this pure heart to want to save everyone. But it's almost like as the years progress of your membership in that church, that you start to realize, oh, salvation isn't for everyone. You know, like at least in the East Coast, it felt like that.
They even,
like,
and let me know if you ever heard things like this too. Like they start to demonize those people too. Like they're homeless for a reason. They're on drugs because they're for a reason. They start to demonize anyone who's not up to the standard of the image that they're looking for. So you start to
the same way. And it's like, and at some point you start to
find
like
ways to excuse it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
like
know a lot of
Mm-hmm.
a lot of members will say that, you know, they're told that the homeless, they'd use the whole, they sinned in heaven, or they had a greater sin in heaven, and that's why they're in the condition they're in. Just to kind of, and it's interesting too, like you said, then you start to kind of adapt. That's how you start to see those people. Like, and so probably that natural empathy that you probably had in the beginning, they kind of like get that out of the way, really, so that you they kill it.
Yeah. It's they even like, and that was something I always did. Like even like, you know, you want to give $1 to a homeless person that you see, or like someone in need, and it always felt like, isn't that like a Christ-like thing to do? You know what I mean? Like you're so happy to join this church in the beginning because of the teachings, right? Because of things like the Sabbath and things like the Passover. You're like, wow, like this church has it all. Like we are the best. Like, you know, like we are so close to Christ, but then you do these little things that don't feel Christ-like. And then you demonize people who do have a mind like that. Like literally when I asked certain questions in my beginning of faith, I was called self-righteous. Like, and they'll call anyone who wants to help people in need like that self-righteous. Oh, you're higher than God. Because why? Because God put them in that position. God made them homeless. So you think you're better than God because you want to help them? And it's like, oh, even just thinking about it makes me upset.
Wow.
And it's like, even after I left, like I think like just a few days ago was like the first time I gave like a panhandler money, and it's like, this is something I used to always do, and it never felt wrong. Like, you know, it didn't feel wrong until I was in the church, and that doesn't make sense because it's like you're a Christian, you know, like you're supposed to be the true and only Christian, right? In their books, like you're the Christian that is the only one going to heaven out of everyone in the world. So it's like, why
you don't
like
realize
that bad?
Yeah, and you don't realize that as time goes by, you're getting farther and farther away from the Christ-like Bible.
Well,
and it's
well, that's interesting because I always wonder with members in regards to this sort of thing you're talking about, where you have homeless people and you know what the Bible would describe as like the lowly of the world, you know, the poor in spirit, the broken, the poor, whether emotionally or physically or financially. Like these are the ones that Jesus emphasized. Like these are the ones who will inherit the kingdom of God. And so it's always interesting to me to process like what's going through members' minds that they want to recognize what is one of the most, you know, clear teachings of the New Testament. Like one of the most profound things about the New Testament is how Jesus did emphasize not just taking care or you know, honoring and giving reverence to the strong and those with power and influence, but looking toward those who don't and those on the opposite end. And you know, anybody from the blind and crippled to the prostitutes. And so, you know, it's always interesting to hear.
It's funny. It's funny to hear that.
So hearing you say, you know, something that I don't know that I've heard before, you know, that I would imagine that many members probably do have that awareness of, you know, I should be giving, you know, it's a good thing. It's a Christian-like thing to give $1 to the guy begging on the street. But it's interesting to hear that one of the strategies, it sounds like that at least you experienced that they used to kind of squash that, was to actually turn that against you and say that your desire to do that is self-righteous, which is just such a extreme case of gaslighting. But I've never really heard that, but that makes a lot of sense about how they would kind of squash that down. And like you said, Cory, just send you deeper and further away from what, you know, true Christianity really is all about.
Yeah.
And even as we speak this, like I said, I'm always thinking in that countermeasure brain. I know exactly what they'll say to this, right? Because they think of everything spiritually. So they're like, their justification for it is like, oh, God doesn't mean like physically poor. Like you think God means physically poor? No, like God means like, those who are
spiritually.
poor in spirit, like they're poor because they don't have the Passover, right?
We're
Like even
spiritually
their, yeah, like they even have, right, like their explanation for the Good Samaritan is not in a literal sense. The Good Samaritan, like that story of the Good Samaritan in the Bible, that story is, interpreted, I don't want to say twisted, I'll say interpreted for them spiritually to say that that's him preaching to him and that's him bringing him to the church, right? Like the donkey is like your vehicle, right? He gives his money for that fruit, right? That person that you're bringing to the church to survive. And, his real form of salvation is coming to the church and keeping the Passover, like they twist things like that. Like that's the real sad poorness is the fact that you're a person without the Passover. And again, when you're new to the church, you're like, yeah, I know that everyone
that
needs
makes
a Passover.
sense.
So why can't I preach to everyone then? Because everyone needs a Passover. But it's like, oh, no, not everyone. Like, it's just such, like, they contradict themselves literally time and time again. They contradict themselves. And it's really sad.
To countermeasure that countermeasure just quickly, because that's exactly what you just said. That's exactly right. Is what they'll do is when they need something to be physical, they'll emphasize the physical nature. When they need to spiritualize it to get rid of, whatever questions or contradictions are being caused, they'll spiritualize it. But I mean, the WMS emphasizes following the pattern of Jesus. Like we're supposed to, that's one of their primary arguments, at least that I've heard in regards to how they defend keeping Passover and Sabbath as well. Jesus did this. We need to follow his example. So right. I would just say to the WMSCOG countermeasure, look at the sort of people that Jesus most often predominantly focused on and went to and was hanging out with, was healing, was feeding. It wasn't, the powerful or the rich or the wealthy or the attractive. It was most often blind people, crippled people, lame people, people with leprosy. And he wasn't just saying, hey, I have nothing to offer you physically. He was saying, he was healing them. He was providing for their needs. And then he told the disciples, everything I've commanded you do likewise. And so, yeah, I just think that's, it is a frustrating, just another example of how they just, they just pick and choose what they want to, to emphasize. But.
Yep. So that was one of the things. I started to see the church as a business. That's what also started to wake me up a little bit. And this was an ongoing thing. Like I probably struggled with all these things even while Cory was in the church, but I was just having such an internal battle with myself. And they always have like these ways that keep you in. like I remember this might have been Cory after you left. When I was really, really feeling like, I don't know, like something's not right. I need to leave this church, I need to leave this church. And like I said, I have my receipts because I was literally texting my mom. And it's so funny because at some point I was texting her all the time. Like I would text my mom, like, hey mom, I don't know what's going on, but like, I feel like I want to leave the church. Right. And at first she's just like, okay, like, like I told you, do whatever you need to do for, like for yourself, what you feel is right. If you feel like something's right, you're going to just do it, and like I said, I would explain to her about me. I'm going to lose my friends. I'm going to lose this. I'm going to it's not an easy decision to make, like I was telling her. And then it'll be like weeks later and I'll text her and I'm like, oh, I was just kidding. Like, I think I'm fine now. Like, I think I'm fine now because like there were always things happening within the church that made me feel like, oh my gosh, like these feelings that I'm having are not good, right? These feelings I'm having are from Satan. Like, I'm losing faith. I'm gonna, like Satan wants me to die spiritually. Like I'm having all these internal things. And even they had like a video, like they're so focused on end of the world and like the signs of the times, which a lot of Christians are, it's not just them, but they bank on it a lot more than a normal Christian church. And like, so they had this video that came out, I would say like last summer, because by last summer was already when I was really like trying to make these like small plans to get out. And for me, it wasn't something easy to do because, and I'll get into that later, but let me explain the video part first. So there was this video and it was like it was literally just now, right? You see what it is. It's a cult tactic to get people afraid to leave church because it's the only place of salvation and you have to stay here. So the video was like showing how, like, scientifically, right, all the things that's going on, the melting of the icebergs that's now releasing these never before seen viruses into the world, how there's like uncontrollable fires breaking out in every single, like, all these regions. And they were showing all the, like, the news clips, you know, and they're showing the flooding that's happening all the time, right? Like the flooding that's happening today in New York, New Jersey, like, you know, stuff like that, like stuff that's like abnormal, that's happening a lot more, and war and animals dying, like all these things. And I was just like, it kind of like made me feel like, oh my God, this is true. Like this is happening. This is actually happening in the world. And I was reminded of that because one of the things that made me come to the church, you know, I came in 2012 when everybody was like, you know, thinking the world was going to end anyways, right? I came in 2012 and I always had this feeling like I was never like, you know, super biblically inclined, you know, like I didn't know. I really just wanted someone to tell me about the Bible because I wanted to believe in the Bible, you know, and no one's ever offered me to show me things through the Bible. And the Church of God did. You know, they were the first ones to do so because, you know, my family was pretty much Catholic. So it's like, you don't really, you know, they're not really Bible led in Catholicism. So that's how Church of God got me, was just Bible studies in general. And by showing, right, the end of the world stuff, because I always felt like, ooh, I don't know, like it feels like the world's going to end, you know? So for that being like the first thing that caught me in the beginning, right, like 11, 12 years ago, and for it to be the thing to keep me a little longer at the end was just like crazy too, you know? It was just like, oh, that's right. Like I do feel like this about the world. Like the world feels like it's going to end. So I have to stay because where am I going to get salvation from, you know? So they had that video and it was around, I would say August of last year. So that kind of reeled me back in where I was like, let me stop being crazy. There's nowhere to have salvation. I have to stay in Church of God. Like, you know, like that's how I felt.
Well, let me just point out there, that is exactly why, as you're talking about how they emphasize the end of the world more than other churches. That is exactly why, because it's such a powerful tool to produce this deep-seated fear where it's they can constantly keep members on their leash. Anytime they start to deviate or wander off, they'll just tug a little bit with that fear that they put in you, and you'll come running right back. And then even members, I think many members, I'm sure, experience even after leaving, you know, and even after realizing that this is all not true, I think it takes some time even still for that fear still has a place inside of you where things will trigger that and probably cause you to ask, oh, wait, well, what if I shouldn't have left? True. What if that was the truth? And because it's just how powerful of a motivator fear can be, and that they just use that to their advantage. And so I'd say that's exactly why, at least probably the primary reason why cults like the WMS are so obsessive about talking about the end of the world, because it just keeps members running back to them.
Yeah, you're always going to have the newscast. You're always going to have, right, this physical proof of it. Like, see, that stuff is happening right now, you know? And like I said, it was one of the things that kind of trapped me for a while longer. And yeah, they use it. They like to say they don't use fear tactics, but that's literally one of them. Like, you have a literal video that you show to your members, and it's like, everyone has to watch this, right? Like, because, you know, we were always, multimedia, we're always like upstairs working on Sabbath, like, you know, in between services. Like, we're always upstairs busy, but there's always these one times that they're like, no, pastor said everyone has to watch this video. So we watched that video like upstairs in our little office, you know? So there are things that it's like, we need every single person to watch this. So you know that it's like, they need it. It's their tool, you know, that's how they're going to like trap you. And so fear tactics was one way that they got me. But then, so this is how it becomes interesting with the whole me and Cory, like, intertwining a bit. So then the feasts come, right? The Feast of God come, where we have those 5 a.m. services, those 8 p.m. services. This was the last one that happened, yeah. Well, you know, so that video was in summer. I left in, November of 2020.
You left, like, right before Heavenly Parents' Day or something.
Yeah.
New Jerusalem
Coming Day.
Yeah, Jerusalem Coming Day, which is
Okay.
Jordan, we have they add a bunch of little feasts in between that aren't biblical.
Okay.
Which was one of those things that you kind of ask yourself, like,
Yeah.
wait, so we can't celebrate Christmas because it's
Yeah.
not in the Bible.
Because it's not in the
let's
Bible.
Celebrate all these other.
But we'll make
like,
up these other things that aren't in the Bible. Yeah.
And you
And
have
so-
hypocrisy.
Yeah. And so timeline wise, Jordan, I had left last May of last year, not this year, but last year. And then we had recorded, I think, in August. I skipped those feasts. And
Wow.
so
Okay.
her time frame was, it's like right in between our
That's
video.
happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So November. You said November 2023
is when
Yes.
I left, and usually the feasts fall like around end of September, early October. So the feast was like this time, right, where you're supposed to, like, I think the first half of the fall feast is when you're repenting of your sins out loud, these morning prayers and these evening prayers. And then it ends with like an actual feast day where you have like, the 2 services for the day and like, like this whole big production. But anyways, so during that feast is like the most holy time of the year. And like, it's, this is like the second chance of the year where you're going to be forgiven of all your sins. So it's very, very important at this time. But I was really struggling at this time, like internally. So I start feeling all these things and I start to pray. And it's so crazy because, they're very obviously very big on praying in Christ Ahnsahnghong's name and praying to God the Mother and all these things. And I just remembered when before I joined the church, I used to pray to just God because I was like, I didn't have any Christian background. I was just Catholic, but I never really had like a biblical background or anything. And I used to pray, like before I came to the church, I just prayed to God and I said, God, like take me wherever you think I need to go. Like I used to pray like that, like, please take me somewhere. The only thing that I felt before I joined Church of God was I did not like the cross. Like, I knew that the cross was bad. So that was another thing. When I studied about cross reverence, idolatry in the Church of God, I was like, oh, of course this is the truth. I knew it. Like, wearing the cross is bad, or, repping the cross is so bad because like, it's so opposite of what we should be doing. Like I already felt that before the church. So I used to pray like, just take me where, like, how do I know what church to go to? There's so many churches to go to. So anyways, why I mentioned that is because during this feast, right, you're supposed to pray out loud. And obviously, like, that's like a hard thing to do. Like, you're going to pray out loud. This person next to you is going to hear all your sins that you're repenting for the past year. So, like, but you're encouraged. You're also encouraged to, like, speak loudly. Like, if you don't pray loudly, it's like, what are you hiding? Or, like, like you're not really repenting if you're not saying it loudly. But it's like, I don't know. Like, I didn't want to, like, say this too loudly because I felt like I couldn't pray in Christ Ahnsahnghong's name at that time. So I didn't, because I was feeling so strongly, like, listen, I was like, listen, God. I was like, listen, God, I prayed to you. And at the time you brought me to this church. So I'm praying to you again with no name, right? Just God. And I'm just praying because I'm not feeling it right now. I'm feeling like it's not the right thing to do. I'm feeling like this is not the right place to be. So please just show me what to do because I don't know. Like, if this is where I'm supposed to be, then keep me here. Like, tell me that I'm supposed to still be here, but, and this was such a risk for me to do because, you're praying out loud. There's people next to you, there's gotta be people listening to your prayers, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so I would just like bring my, we wear the veil. So I would just bring my veil really low and I would like put my hands like in front of me and I was like praying out loud, but I was like praying into my hands so that I could still pray out loud because you do feel this kind of like, you felt like it was a more powerful prayer by like praying out loud. So I was like, I still have to pray out loud, but I was like, I don't want the people next to me to tell on me for not praying to Christ Ahnsahnghong's name. And I was literally saying like, I'm not going to pray to that name right now because I feel like
you're saying
guidance,
these things
like,
out loud in your prayer.
Out loud, yeah. I was like,
wow.
It was such a risk because I was so scared.
Yeah.
That is a risk.
That the people next to me were gonna like rat me out, but I felt like I had to do it, like because you still feel like you're in this holy setting, you know what I mean? So I was like just praying like that because I had to get it out. So then during the feast, it was so interesting. So the feast, right? These 5 a.m. services, it's like it's supposed to be just that out loud prayer, and they read from like a sermon book for like 15, 20 minutes, and then you leave because you're trying to jet out because you're so tired. You have to do this all over again at 8 p.m. You have to go to your regular job in the daytime. Like you're so like physically done during the feast. So Pastor Daniel Lee, he never extends these sermons unless it's like a Tuesday, you know, like a service day. He doesn't extend these sermons because, you know, people just want to get out. Like they're sleepy, they're tired. Like they have to do this for 7 days, 10 days in a row. So during this feast, every single service, during service and even after the service, he started to say stuff like, oh, there's members that have been in the church for 10 plus years and now they're losing their faith. It's such a bad thing. Like he would go on and on. He would even start to add like these extra verses. Like he was starting to talk about people who were in the church for 10 plus years and losing their faith and how sad it was and how terrible, like that they wasted their life, right? Like doing so much for the gospel and then they just throw it all away. Mind you, on the inside, I'm praying to God
that's you,
to
Cory.
give me a sign. No, but it's funny because it was like I was even more conflicted because now I'm thinking, is this the sign that I was asking for? I'm like, is God, because I was also in the church for 10 plus years and I'm losing faith. So I'm like, is God
he warning me?
Stay here? Yeah. So I was like, is God telling him? You know, because you're like, obviously, like, so I'm gonna say brainwashed, right? To believe that this man is a prophet of God, right? Like, and Daniel Lee, he was like such a scary person to like talk to and like even just be around. Like, you really felt like he was a prophet from God, and he really is Zhang Gil Jah's like favorite son. Let's just say that. Like, she's like his number one, I guess, because of the numbers that she gives that woman. But like, anyways, like you really felt like he was a prophet. So like I said, I wasn't fully feeling like this wasn't the right place. I was battling that feeling of whether this is the right place or not. So I'm thinking, did God just tell the prophet that I'm struggling with my faith? And then, so anyways, every day, this was every day for these 7 days and then these 10 days during this feast, he keeps talking about this. And at some point, I'm just like, okay, it can't just be me. Like, I was like, then I started to think, who else is going through this? Like, who is this 10 plus year member that is losing their faith, or like who else is losing their faith? Like, you know, I started to kind of like want to look around and be like, what's going on? Like, are multiple of us going through this? And like, I need to know because I'm feeling like this, like, you know, all these things. So somehow this whole time he was talking about Cory and I had no idea. Cause like I said, I'm texting Cory.
Yep.
One funny thing that I was doing too, cause I was really going through it. I started to diagnose people in the church. And this is funny because they call me like the unlicensed therapist because I'm always like, you know, like just reading off like symptoms of stuff and like, you know, this sounds like this person might be this, like ADHD or like bipolar or like all these other things. So at some point while I'm going through this battle of faith, I started diagnosing people around me. Like, I'm like, because there were some things that I knew people had, that I knew people in the Church of God were diagnosed with and like medicated for. And there were some things that I just kind of started to like wonder, right? Like there's a lot of neurodivergent people in the church. I started to realize that. And so I would do this research on just stuff because internally I was trying to understand why people stay in the church. So that's why I started diagnosing people, because I was looking around like, oh, there's got to be a common factor here. Like, there's got to be something. Because remember I told you I was looking around at the members like if this is the truth, everyone should receive this. And why is only certain kinds of people coming? Like, you know, I was just trying to understand the statistics of the church, you know, and they did it to themselves because they made it so business-like, right?
I
so,
remember
the
thing that you sent me. So I remember it was this time she sent me this article about like narcissism. Full-blown like narcissistic personality disorder. And she was like, you made a comment like, this reminds me.
Guess who this is?
Yeah, guess who this is?
Or like, does this remind you of anyone?
Yeah. Jordan, when I tell you I wanted so badly to be like, that is literally Daniel Lee on a piece of paper.
That's so funny because I wasn't thinking him at the time.
I knew, but now I also knew who he was thinking of because I just knew. but I wanted
Yeah.
so badly to be like,
Yeah. Because you were already at that point of
I had
like
already,
she was
I had
already
already,
speaking out against the church and everything,
Yeah.
yeah.
which I didn't know. Like I literally didn't know that she was doing that stuff. Because if I did, then I really wouldn't have been talking to her because I would have had that fear of like, oh my God, she's a
Yep.
slanderer now, you know? So yeah, that was the
Which
one funny thing
that
because yeah,
that I was just gonna say that's good job to Cory. I think there's some wisdom there
yeah.
and how she handled that, and perhaps for people wondering, that question going back to earlier, what can I do to help my
Yeah.
daughter, my son, my wife, my husband get out? I think perhaps there's something to really consider there from with how Cory handled that situation.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think, like you're saying, she could have handled it in a way, and it sounds like Cory, it took some restraint to not handle it at certain times in a way that could have and likely would have just driven her even deeper into it.
Yeah, to be like, oh no, girl, you saying too much. Because I was like, when she told me, because I had shared with her what what the coexisting things were happening right at that time. And she said that she wanted to say Daniel Lee, and I was like, if she would have said Daniel Lee, I would have been like, no, like at that time I would have said no. But it was another member that I was thinking of that me and her knew. So it was just funny. Like I was texting her stuff like that, like I knew that she was like no longer really attending the church, but I didn't know that she was like full blown like speaking out against the church. So that was like the difference there. So I would send her that stuff because she was someone I trusted. Like, I knew she wasn't going to like tell on me, but I needed someone. Like I needed someone to validate that, this list of symptoms matches this member. So narcissist was something I started to diagnose a lot of members with. Narcissism. A lot of the leaders, yes, Daniel Lee, John Casas, all of them. A lot of the main leaders that are like, like pastors and like overseers, they fit narcissist bill like to the T. So anyways, I started to see a lot of neurodivergence, right? Like autism in different levels, like different levels of the spectrum. Like, people that we knew, right, that we know have autism or just, are kind of like, you kind of feel like they're on the spectrum, but they're not diagnosed yet or something. ADHD was a lot, which I have, like, and why I say that is because they all have like these specific reasons of why maybe they're attracted to cults in general, right? Or religion. And it's like, like the reason why I was even coming to diagnose it is because I was like, diagnose these things is because I was like, there's got to be something that keeps all these types of people, because I think the first one that I noticed a lot of people had was ADHD, because I had it too. So I was like, dang, like, is it like all ADHD people are coming to the church? Like, just things like little things like that I just wanted answers for.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point is like if somebody were to go the research route.
Yeah, that's what I kind of was doing.
The
Because I was like,
research route.
something's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good, like, honestly, there's like a book that could be written regarding
So
like.
you were working on your thesis at the end of your
Yeah, I literally was writing
your
down
research.
Yeah, I
trying to
started to
answer.
write down names. I was writing down names, and I had a list. And then, also and then I was like, I even wrote this down. If I pull up my phone, I probably can read it word for word of what I wrote. But there was something I wrote of like regarding the Korean members, because I was like, I noticed Korean members don't really have any kind of, mental, like there was like certain umbrellas of stuff. There was the neurodivergent. There were other just mental like disorders, like whether it was bipolar or like, what was the other one? Borderline personality. Like some people I knew were diagnosed with it or like on the verge of getting diagnosed. Just so many different things like that. And then there were, what's the other one? Like trauma. Like people had past traumas that you kind of felt like, oh, maybe that's why like this attracted them about the church. Like, they didn't really grow up with a father figure, or they didn't really grow up with a mother figure. And that's why God the Mother is so important to them. Like, like there were just little things that I was clocking in each member. And I don't know why I was thinking so much like that, but it was almost like, when you like that matrix pill that they like to say that you take, like, like, I don't know. It was just like this clarity that was on me that every single person I saw, I started to look at them like, this is why they stay. This is why they stay. Like, like I was trying to
like there's a psychological rationale
like
to why it is that they're in
Yeah.
this church and why they're
Yeah.
continuing to stay in.
And the reason why I wanted those kind of answers, I guess, for myself was because, like I said, I started to feel like this isn't the church. you know, that I've thought my entire young adult life to be in. You know, I started to like, and I just wanted answers for myself, you know, to understand if I'm going to leave this church, I have to be sure, right? Like basically being sure that I know it's not the right place for me to be, you know, because you have that internal battle of like, because there's like their teachings, like the simple stuff. And I know that you guys like, you know, can countermeasure it. Like, you know, even like regular Christians, like, you know, so many people can countermeasure like, no, you don't need the Sabbath. No, you don't need the Passover. But just understanding that when you've been ingrained with this teaching in your life and you see, like, even like Jordan, when I was kind of like trying, I was still kind of scared to like look for stuff online when I was like in the verge of leaving. I came across your videos and I would not click them because I was like, listen, I am not going to listen to a Sunday worshiper. Like, you know, like there was just stuff like that you're like, listen, if there's one thing I know, it's that Sabbath is in the Bible. Like, you know, stuff like that keeps you in the church, like Passover. So it's like little things like that. When you're battling all the other crap that you see in the church, you're like, okay, like I can leave for all these other hundreds of thousands of reasons, but where am I going to find the Sabbath? Where am I going to find the Passover? And then that kind of traps you for a little bit longer, you know? So anyways, so yeah, I was diagnosing people left and right. And I was telling Cory, which I was like kind of scared to do, which was also important because it's what led me to finding her Instagram page. So anyways, so yeah, from the altar, pastor saying all these things like, yeah, people who are 10 plus years in the church and then they leave. So I'm like, is this a sign for me? Like, is God trying to save me? But then when I finally realized, no, this is a deeper issue. Like something's going on. He's talking about something's happening on the back end of things that I don't know. And for me to even say that is crazy because we worked upstairs, we called it, in the tech area, multimedia. Like you work so closely with Pastor Daniel Lee that we tend to know things that the members on the regular member level don't know. So the fact that I didn't know what was happening with whatever he was saying on the altar was already like weird that I didn't know that. You know what I mean? Because we would just know things on the back end a little bit, you know? So I don't remember exactly when it was, but I texted another sister that I was really close to. And I just texted her random, like, I wonder who the heck pastor's talking about. Because I was like, at this point, he's talking about it every single day. He's making these prayer services go super long, which he would never do because people literally want to go home. Yeah, he was obsessed. He was hurt, actually, Cory. You hurt his feelings. He was so
you know,
hurt.
good, because
yeah. I was like, whoever left the church, they're so hurt by it. And I thought it was this one deacon. You know who I'm talking about. I thought it was him. I was like, was it him? Like, did he leave? Because he's so hurt by this person who left because he's talking about it every single day. So I texted this sister and I was like, you know, just casual because she was someone I texted every day. And I was like, I wonder what the heck pastor's talking about because he's talking about it like every day. So, and this was like in the middle of the workday.
One thing really quick, just because I know he's going to hear it. If you were so hurt by me leaving and so distraught by your sister leaving the church, you never called me, Daniel Lee.
Right,
you never tried to, you never reached out. You never bothered to apologize or anything. So,
he could have fixed this. And maybe you would have still been there.
I would have still been
keeping the Sabbath day.
If he would have pulled, I still know this to this day, if he would have pulled me aside and truly apologized to me, I'd probably still be in there.
Because you weren't fully like, this is a cult yet, you know?
No, I still believed. I left and I still believed. But anyway, I just wanted to throw a message in there for him who's so hurt.
Yeah.
Shove it.
Yeah. He was hurt. You hurt his feelings. So yeah,
good. Somebody hurt his feelings. Damn, he hurt everybody else's feelings.
Right? Yeah, he does not.
Yeah,
I'm clearly not.
That's the funny thing. I want to say. Why?
No, you're good.
I want to say like how you know that Pastor Daniel Lee is a narcissist is because he fits the bill so well, but also he has this ability to make people like have sympathy for him in the greatest way. Like, you honestly love this man. Like, I can honestly say I loved him at some point, you know, like, you know how they always say, like, you need that charismatic leader? That's Daniel Lee. And it's funny because within the Church of God, there's levels of that, right? Because obviously when you see that a cult leader is the narcissist, charming person, of course they mean the cult leader who started it all, right? Which would, in this case, would be like Zhang Gil Jah or like maybe general pastor. But on the second tier of that would be the pastors, and our pastor Daniel Lee, he's like the textbook narcissist. You know, like he is able to make you have so much sympathy for him, even when he's bringing you down to your lowest. Even when he is like offending you to your core, you're like, wow, that's my brother. Like he loves me, he cares about me. Like, you know, like you're like you like brainwash yourself into like wow, he really cares for me because he's telling me that I'm the most disgusting vile thing on this world. Like, you know, like he really has that ability to like, you know, make you love him. And so anyways, you hurt his feelings. But so I texted that to the sister, and it was like the middle of a work day. Honestly, it was literally like daytime. And the first thing she says is, "Can I call you?" And I was like, oh man, like already I felt a million thoughts running through my mind, but I was like, the only reason why she would want to call me, I was like, I feel like it's Cory, you know, like that was my thought. So that's surely what it was, because everybody knew that I was close to Cory, like on a deeper level. Like they knew that I was like, you know, close to her. So she calls me and she's like, like I didn't want to be the one to tell you this. She's like, you know, especially if you haven't heard it already. Like, don't tell anyone. She's like, don't tell anyone that I told you this. She's like, but I heard that Cory is posting stuff online. She's slandering the church, and this is exactly what she told me, and this is why that text message that I was sending her about narcissists comes into play, because it connects it all. Because she says she's been posting screenshots of members' conversations, and I was just like, in my head, I'm like, oh my god, like, you know, I'm like freaking out, because I'm like, first of all, I did not know that Cory's a slander. I was like, what? First of all, I'm thinking that's insane, because I am literally texting Cory every other day, like. She has not said anything to me, because our definition of a slander, like I said, is like they're a demon, they're Satan, they're trying to take you out of the church. And me and Cory are just like sending memes to each other back and forth every day, and talking about jobs in the city and like, you know, like regular human stuff. Like, so I was like, slander? Because, you know, I'm still very much cult minded. I'm like, if she was a slanderer, she'd be like it would be clear to me that she was a slanderer,
Yeah.
you know?
I would have horns. Something.
Yeah, but I was afraid, because I was like, okay, if it's her. And then when the sister mentioned she's posting conversations of members, you know, I got scared, because I'm like, dang, I sent her those links about the narcissist, and I was like, what if she posts that? Because I had no idea what kind of content she was posting. So I got worried. My worry was because Cory didn't know that internally I am making plans to leave the church in some way. So the reason why I was being so secretive about that was because of what Cory went through when she got kicked out of the church. It was like I was living her parallel life a year later, because when Cory got shunned and all these things, like she mentioned, she was my roommate. So we lived in the same house. I was there, right, when she was on probation and all these things, how they treated her, how hard it was for her to, like, you know, be excommunicated in that way and then be brought back and like shamed, right? Because everybody knew her face. Like literally, we were walking to the Passover, Cory, remember, and I was like, you can walk behind me if you want. Like you can hide behind me, because I knew that she just felt like, you could just imagine like this utter shame that you feel by being shunned like that, embarrassed in front of the entire assembly, and then have to like parade yourself through these people once again. Like it's really, like it really messes with your mental, you know what I mean? Like, so I know she was going through so much stuff, but I really didn't know the severe level of what she was really feeling until I saw, you know, her page and like the messages that she posted. But I still felt to some degree of what she was going through, you know? So, you know, mind you, I'm being a witness to everything that she went through, right? That shame, that shunning, the fact that we lived together. I was there, like, I was actually even involved with the fact that, you know, because I used to talk to Missionary Rebecca, who was our group leader. You know, she's like, you know, like she's like the pastor Daniel Lee's like right hand in the church, but she happened to be our group leader. So it meant like all of our little problems or whatever we were going through, like we would go to her for that, because she was like our little leader, you know. So, you know, I had a really close relationship with Missionary Rebecca, and at this time, you know, Cory's going through all her stuff, and I was just, you know, kind of like kind of confiding in them how worried I was for Cory's salvation, you know, at the time, because at the time she wasn't really like, you know, going preaching anymore or like doing the gospel life things. And I was so like concerned for her at the time, right? Because this was a year before I was, you know, going through my little faith struggle, when I was still like, you know, crying because Cory, like, you know, is going through a tough time, and crying because like, you know, she's like, you know, not having this fire for the gospel anymore, like, you know, stuff like that. So like they basically gave her that ultimatum, right? Like, listen, if you're not going to live this gospel life, like, you know, like dorming with sisters, right? That's what they called it, dorming. Living with sisters is a privilege that is, what do you call it? Is a privilege that is given only to those who are living the gospel life, right? So we dormed with sisters meant we like lived and roomed, right? Communally lived with other members, but they didn't let just anyone communally live together. Like you had to be a gospel worker, you know, you had to be the person that was devoting your life to the church on a daily basis. You know, you couldn't just be like, you know, going out to visit your family during the week and then like live with them, you know, you like that kind of thing. So Cory was given that ultimatum of going to live on her own, because they couldn't kick her out of that apartment because the lease was on her name, right? So her name was on the lease. So they knew that legally they can't kick her out of that apartment, because like in the real world, that's illegal, right? So they said, do you want to stay there? But we're going to take all the sisters out, right? So imagine she would have had to pay for a 3-bedroom apartment by herself in this town that she's only in because of the church, you know, like it's not even her hometown or anything. So it's like, do you want to stay there or do you want to get out? And Cory was like, all right, right? Like, you were like, this is perfect. I want to leave. Like, you know, like I want to go to Jersey, because she was working in New York City, I think, at the time. So she moved to Jersey and I stayed. I took over the lease. So it's like, that's why I said I was like living like Cory's parallel, just like 1 year later. So now my name's on the lease, right? So I knew that if I start to lose face in front of these people, that they're going to do the same thing to me. Like I'm going to be shunned. I'm going to be shamed for like losing faith, especially being in that position that I was in. Like, I was like, I wasn't ready for them to give me that kind of ultimatum, because I had nowhere to go. Like, I wasn't going to, you know, stay in that apartment by myself. I was also in a town that wasn't my hometown. I didn't want to like, you know, live there by myself. And I wasn't ready to go live on my own yet. Like, I was trying to prepare that. My job was in New Windsor, like, you know, my regular job. So that's why I was trying to plan for myself, my escape route. My plan was to first get a job in either New Jersey or New York City, so that I can then find an apartment in New Jersey, right, closer to my family, so I can go there, because I didn't have like family I could live with, nothing. Like, I felt stuck. So for this entire year, I was kind of just trying to like get a job so that I can get an apartment, so I can get out, so that I don't have to deal with like that shame, or deal with like that ultimatum, or like, you know, being put out on the street or something, you know, just in some situation that I couldn't get out of because of like losing my faith, you know? So I was being very, very careful about the steps I was taking. So when I saw that they said Cory was posting conversations with members, I was like, oh my God, like she's going to expose me and I'm going to get in trouble, because like, you know, I'm like whatever she's doing, like she's slandering, and it's going to look like I'm helping her because I'm sending her stuff about narcissists. Like, you know, I was just so worried for myself, because I was like, oh my God, I'm not ready to be exposed yet, because I'm not ready. Like, my escape plan wasn't in place yet, you know? So I was so like worried about that. So put that to the side. That was the first person to tell me that Cory was slandering. And I was like, you know, like I said, I was like, there's no way. Like, what does that even mean? Like, how could she be a slanderer? Like, you know, she wasn't fitting what we always taught that slanderers were, you know? So
Right.
it didn't make sense to me. So then I forgot what else happened. Something else happened where like finally, like missionary Rebecca told me about this. No, somebody else. Missionary Cassandra was the one that told me, like, yeah, Cory, like I just kind of asked her on the side, because there's this one missionary in the church. I know that she loves gossip. And I know that she loves knowing things.
She was always up in my business too.
She was so bad.
Really loved. No.
She was one of the ones, I'm going to put this on the record so everyone can know, missionary Cassandra. She wanted to know so bad what Cory did when Cory was on probation. Like, she wanted to know so bad that even the missionary Rebecca was like, why do you want to know? Like, it's none of your business. Yeah, like, she wanted to know so bad what sin Cory committed that got her, like, on probation or whatnot, like, excommunicated from the church. So she was just that kind of person, so I kind of knew that she was, and we were at this event, and I happened to be, like, next to her that whole day after I was already knowing this Cory's slander information. And I was asking her something else. Like, I was asking her something else completely, but she jumps in and she's like, "Oh, you're asking about Cory?" And I was like, "I wasn't asking about Cory, but what do you know?" Like, like, she was so, like, it was like she had it inside of her. She wanted to say it so bad. So I was like, I wasn't gonna ask about Cory, but what's going on? Like, and she was like, yeah, like, she's like posting like these things online. Like, she's a complete slanderer now, talking about father and mother and all these things. And I was just like, oh, okay. Yeah,
a complete.
So a total complete slander.
Your path to the dark side was complete.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, this is like confirmation that I'm getting about Cory, and I still didn't believe it, because I even told Cassandra. I was even like, that's crazy, because like I would text Cory all the time, and she hasn't said anything to me. Like, I was like, she's just, I was like, we've just been sending messages, like, memes to each other back and forth. Like, I literally told her that. So anyways, so then that night, this is like October. That night, I panicked because of what that sister told me about the screenshots of messages. And it was so funny because for some reason at this time, social media isn't really encouraged, especially during one time in our life, our gospel life, like because we were there for like 10 plus years before social media was like really, really a thing. It was like flat out said that you should not have social media. Now it's more lenient. Like, they can't sit there telling people not to have social media because then you really look like a cult, So people do have it, but like, it's still considered kind of worldly if you're into it too much and all this stuff. So anyways, I would sometimes take breaks from social media. So during this time that Cory started slandering, I was actually on a break from social media. So I didn't have Instagram or anything. I had deactivated it. So I made a fake page that night. And I made a fake page, and I went to go find whatever the heck Cory's posting. Because at this point, now I think even somebody else told me that she's posting like memes or something. And I'm like, what? Like, like what? Like, it was just so crazy. So when I go and I find her page, because what I was really searching for was like, is this girl exposing, like,
your
text, my text messages? Like, that's what I wanted to know.
Your text,
even though I know I'm such good friends with her, when somebody says you're a slanderer, you think that they've lost their mind, like they have no, like, nothing is out of, what do you call it? Like, nothing's off limits to them. So whether I was her friend or not, if she's a slanderer, if I send her something that would benefit her slander, I felt like she would post it. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I felt at that time. And I was afraid of that for myself, because I felt like, girl, I'm not ready to get kicked out of a church yet. Because I'm not like, physically prepared. I don't have anywhere to live, So anyways, so I go on the page and I see what she's posting, and I see that she's literally just posting her story. Like, she's posting things that actually happened to her. And that's why I say that was my first time realizing that my entire life in that church, I was only thinking of the word slander with their definition of it, not the actual definition, which is like you're telling lies about an organization or a person, right? No. So I'm like, I see what she's posting, and I read the whole thing, and I found Luca's page, which Luca was a very important page to me as well, because I also knew her in the church. Knew them in the church. And they worked in the multimedia department in my same position, graphics department. So a lot of the things that they were posting about, I also went through, you know what I mean? So they were both, like, Cory's page and Luca's page, they were both posting things that not only did I go through, but even in Cory's case, I literally witnessed. So I was like, they're not posting slander. They're posting the truth. Like, this stuff really happened. So then I'm conflicted, like, why is the church saying that Cory's slandering if all of this stuff really happened? Like, like, I was so, like, kind of mad. Like, I was like, why are they, like, like, yes, you're posting stuff and you're mad that it's exposed, I guess, but why would you sit there and tell the members that this is slander instead of taking accountability for the things that you literally did? Like, you did all of these things, like, I was there. I witnessed what you did to Cory. I was there. I lived the kind of life that, like, Luca lived, like, all these things. Like, I was just like, wow, slander is not slander. Like, you know, I was like, she's not the slanderer that I thought people were saying she was going to be. So then, you know, I read those pages all night. And then I was like, I got to get out of here. I was like, it became an emergency to leave the church. Whereas before it was just, right, I had to make my escape plan first and kind of like, you know, go through the motions of like keeping every service, right? I was preaching all the time because that was one thing. In the tech team, which I was in, we didn't really get to preach much. But once they saw that Cory left, they really went down hard on us. Like, they were like, listen, you guys are dying because you're not preaching and because you're not studying the Bible. Which again, like now I see it, like it's just a tactic. It's like when you're not constantly in their version of the Word of God, when you're not constantly filled with their doctrine, when you're not constantly, right, like thinking nothing other than their doctrine, when you have a minute to think for yourself, that's what they don't want.
Yes.
So in the tech team, even though we were so busy and overworked, you did still have a little bit of time to like, you know, think for yourself. And I think they were so afraid of that.
You were still in tech team.
I was in tech team the entire time. I was in tech team. Nobody. That's why like I felt so bad when I left, was because nobody had a clue that I was going to leave the church. Like,
you have to share your
my escape.
Yeah, tell us about your escape. How did you get out, and what did that process look like?
And you had just got done looking at all the Instagram things. So
this was like a Sunday, right? Sunday night, or maybe it was Monday night. I think it was a Monday night, right? Sunday night was when Cassandra told me about you slandering. Monday night was when I decided I have to see this for myself. You know, stayed up till like 3 o'clock in the morning, or maybe later than that, because, you know, our night ends at like 12 o'clock at night. So I was up like all night reading that stuff. And then the next day was Tuesday service. And I think that's when I called you. I called Cory on the work day.
Okay.
Because, and you know, this was pivotal for her too, because she's like, has no idea that I know now that she's a slanderer. But so I called her because at this point I realized, okay, I'm not crazy with the way I'm feeling about this place. And I'm not crazy for wanting to leave, because someone like these people that I knew, like Luca, like Cory, I knew them on a personal level. They've realized that the church is this manipulative cult. And I was like, it is, because those are also like, you know, like I mentioned, the other reasons for me leaving were like, you know, the way that the church was now running like a business, the fact that, you know, it isn't the truth that all the people in the world are receiving, like, you know, stuff like that. But also I felt the control of my life was like just too much at this point. Like how Cory mentioned that we would like escape to do like simple things like go to the movies. Like, we're 30-year-old women. Right. Like, you know, like, why is Cory getting in trouble for like texting a boy? Like, you know, stuff like that it's like, they make it seem like, right, like they gaslight everything to say, oh, we don't say you can't go to the movies, we don't say you can't have a boyfriend, like, you know, like, and then if you do want those things, they villainize you in the church too. Like, Pastor Danley has literally said things like, oh, you want to live your life, oh, you want to have a safety net, oh, you want to have a boyfriend, you're thinking about a boyfriend instead of thinking about the gospel, like, you know, so many things, so that when people leave the church and then they end up doing those things that are just natural parts of life, they're like, see, that's why they left. Like, you know, like, they're like they always contradict themselves. Like, no, we don't say you can't do those things, or those things are totally fine to do in the church. Like, what are you talking about? But then you know, if you even have like an inkling of doing those kind of things, they make you seem like you're not going to have salvation. What's wrong with you? You're like, you know, like, they always contradict themselves. But yeah, like, that control over my life was crazy. Like I said, I was very, very close to family. So, you know, there was just so many other factors going into it. Like, you know, people just think it was something simple like Cory calling me and saying, hey, they're a cult, like, get out of there. You know, no, like I didn't even know that Cory was slandering until the very, very last minute when I was already deciding I want to get out. It's just my process was slow because I was trying to get out, you know, rent was expensive. Like, I was trying to find a place to live, you know? So then,
and even when you called me, even when you called me that day, I was hesitant. I was like, crap, how do
Yeah.
I,
Yeah,
how do
I
I,
know. You don't know what to think.
how do I explain?
You were like a little scared. I could tell you were like, what? Oh, I think I texted you first. Like,
You
I
did,
was
you
like,
asked
hey,
me.
I was like, can I call you? Because it became such a like, it just became so important that now instead of me having this long-term escape plan, I had to leave right now, you know? So it was like middle of October and I texted her, hey, can I call you? And then she picks up. It's like, I went outside, like, of my workplace, and I was like, hey, I saw what you've been posting. And like, there's this like long pause. Who knows what she's thinking? Like, oh no, she's gonna like, whatever you're thinking. Yeah. And I was just like, I just wanted you to know that I'm also trying to leave the church. And I was like, I just wanted to, and I started crying, like bawling, because I'm like a really emotional person. I cry very easily. So I just started crying, and I'm like, the only reason I wanted to reach out to you is because I didn't want you to like post any of my messages because I can't be exposed right now. Like, I was like, I can't, like my situation is that I can't afford to be excommunicated right now. Like I can't do it without being ready because I had nowhere to go. So, we both like were just like in relief, I guess, at this point, because like, this is when finally Cory's like, what? Like, you want to leave the church? Like, like she literally up until that moment, she had no idea. And I was like, yeah. So she was like, yeah, man, get out of that place. Like, like that's the first time that she told me, like, yeah, get out of there. Like, it's a cult. I was like, yeah, I feel it now. Like, she let me come to that on my own. And I'm so thankful
Yeah.
for that because, like you said, if she would have did it the other way, maybe it would have made me build those walls up. And then I would have felt like, because they make everything feel like pathetical and everything feel like, oh, the times, right? This is happening because of the times. So I probably would have felt like, oh, because this is happening, because she's a slanderer now, because I almost fell, I have to build up, right, my faith and not leave the church now. Like, it could have went a totally different way if she was just straight up like, get out of there, But she didn't do that at all, and I'm so thankful for that. Because also it shows, it proves them wrong. It shows that they try to say these things about members who leave that are not true. Like most people leave and just want to like live their life. Like, yeah, we want to speak out, whatever, but it's like you have every right to speak out. Like you robbed us of our young adult lives. Like how can you just think that like why can you just go on and live happily ever after? Like why can't we get some closure for what, we went through during our time there? So like, whatever. Like they don't like to have any accountability for what they do, and it kind of sucks. It's like, yeah, I can go on and live my life. I am going on to live my life. But people do need to know that if they go to your church, there's some stuff that's gonna go down in there, Like you could make things that affect your life on a grander scale. And obviously the church is very much changing nowadays, right? Where they're kind of a little bit more lenient about certain things, but they're still very controlling and they're still a manipulative cult at the end of the day, so they can change whatever they want about themselves, especially after more people are speaking out about how they really are. But their core values are always going to be there. Sorry, so I always get off track. But anyways, my escape, right? So yeah, so I called Cory. It became an emergency. I was like, yeah, you're right. I gotta get the heck out of here. So and now I feel like, in the church, when you're in the church, you're always like, wow, Father and Mother orchestrated this and Father and Mother orchestrated that. Like everything is God's will. You always say how things are God's will. And so for me, things were still very much in God's will. Like, except I wasn't praising like God the Father, God the Mother at this point anymore. But it was just crazy how things happened. Like the reason why, my escape plan was so slow at first was because I had nowhere to go. Like I didn't want to really bother anybody. Like, all of my sisters wouldn't have really had the space to let me stay with them for, the time that I would have needed. So I reached out to my cousin who actually, me and her got baptized in this church the same exact day. And she lived part of her gospel life with me in the beginning, but she left about like 6 years before I did. So me and her were always really close before the church, and we kind of lost our relationship a little bit while I was like deep in the church and she was no longer attending. But I reached out to her and I said, hey, listen, I want to leave the church and I have nowhere to go. So, I'm trying to like, have a way out of this place, but I don't know what to do. Actually, I texted her and my sisters as well, two of my sisters. And
can I just point out real quick? It's just interesting to me. I'm just thinking about the sort of churches I'm used to, just normal Christian churches, and just you're talking about this so normally, but just how difficult it was, that it would literally affect your entire life. You did not have the financial capacity to just leave the church.
No.
And I'm just saying that, like, for those listening, don't let that just go past and not stop and think and consider that, because again, that itself is just so revealing about the nature of these types of organizations, that they make you not just emotionally and spiritually, and they use the fear and all that, but even financially, they make you not all members probably into the capacity that you were, but I think for many of you, they make you so dependent that it's just one more thing keeping you trapped inside. It all, when you start to put it all together, it just looks so diabolical and evil, just how much they strategize, it seems like, whether knowingly or unknowingly, to just put all these restraints from keeping members from leaving.
If you think about it. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm glad you put that into that perspective, Brian, because Tiff and I were talking about this the other day, leading up to this video, where she was like, I don't know if what I have to say is really, like, sometimes ex-members come on to share stories, and they're like, it's just like that, you start to kind of downplay it a little bit, because
it wasn't that bad, but
you start to almost yourself, like,
really helpful for me to say something.
It wasn't that bad. And so I was like, no, Tiffany, nothing about this was normal or right.
Yes.
It sounds like it flows out so easily because it was
right.
It was our life.
Yeah. Well, no, like it literally, like you're talking about so normally, and it's like, it's obviously it's not right, but I'm just like hearing it, you talk about it over and over, and like, wait a minute, like this isn't, we're talking about, or you're talking about just like normal conversationally, but it's something worth stopping and realizing that is not normal at all. That's you can say what you want about different Christian churches and their issues, but like that's not something that you see in them, where they make you so dependent on them. Yes, exactly. That is not normal.
Exactly. That's true, because if you think about it, I was lucky. I was one of the lucky ones, because New Windsor, my hometown and where my family is only about an hour away, like 50 minutes if you speed, like it's not that far from New Windsor. But if you think about the people who picked up their lives for this place, like, because New Windsor was the headquarters, right, the East Coast, and like Cory had mentioned in the beginning, when they see that you have like this talent, whether it's a talent for leadership, a talent for like the multimedia department, a talent for singing, whatever it is, whatever they can bank on out of you, they bring you to New Windsor, because it's like the training ground, and it's also the headquarters, right, where all the things just happen. So there's people that come from everywhere. There's people that come, back when Florida was, a region of Daniel Lee, people would come from Florida. People come from the islands, from Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. They leave all of their families, right? Maryland, where Cory was originally from, where it's not easy for them to just go visit their family for the weekend. You know what I mean? Like, they leave their families from so far away, and you're in this secluded town. Sorry, I'm trying not to curse, because I curse a lot. like, you leave this little, like, you live in this little secluded town where your community is just these people around you, right, that live the same kind of life as you. And so imagine even just the thought of being excommunicated by those people, that is really all you have. And your relationships with them, that's why, our relationship, like me and Cory's, was like so important in a way, because we knew that we had each other, not just with that connection from the church. You know what I mean? Because usually your connections are very, very superficial. Like, I lost a lot of friendships that I thought we did have, like, these deeper connections, like me and Cory had, that really it ended after I left. And not only because I left, but really because they thought I was affiliated with, like, Cory's shenanigans. Like, people just dropped me completely, like people who I really, really care for. So it's like, you know, like that stuff, they really seclude you from anything and everything. So they really make it impossible for you to like leave and succeed, at least right away. You know what I mean? Because like you said, like it's really hard, even financially. All your money is going to this place. Like, you know, any extra money that you made or whatever, like obviously you're just tithing and offering, but like I used to tell people, like our mission that we were in, like, you know, in the tech, like, you know, not only are you paying extra for that mission, it was like you were a worker for a company, but you're not only you're not getting paid, right? Like you're not getting paid, but you're also paying for it. So it's like you're paying to work for this corporation. Like the software that I used to make their materials, I had to pay for. They were right when I was leaving, they wanted to upgrade their computers to Macs. And it was so funny because on the inside, I'm like, wow, these people have no idea that I'm about to leave. Like, like they had no idea because I really had to like really keep up appearances that I wasn't losing faith because I didn't want, you know, like I said, I couldn't afford to be excommunicated because I just wasn't ready for that mentally nor physically. So they're talking about upgrading these computers and they're like talking about it like all these things. And they're like, yeah, we have to pay for it. The church is not going to pay for it. So like these computers that we're going to use only for the church, that we're not going to take home with us. They're going to belong to the church. Another thing is in this mission, if the pastor or whoever suddenly decided you're no longer in that mission, you're not going to do that mission anymore. So that computer that you paid $2,000 for, now it's going to be used by someone else that didn't even pay for it. You know, like me, like you were expected to just give, and everything belonged to God. So that's why it was okay.
Still have a nice set of monitors up there.
Yeah, you left your monitors. Everything you bought. If you needed a new office chair for your little area, you bought that. Like, you know, and it's like, you know, a member would hear this right now and they're just gonna think, duh, like why are you complaining about that? Duh, like that's what you have to do. Like, why are you complaining about that? Like, you know, like I'm not complaining about it. I'm just telling you how insane that is. Like that the church like requires all this free labor, but at the time it's not even just free labor. You're also paying to do this free labor for them. So it's like if you think about it as a corporation who is making money, right? Let's say money are the members.
Which is
right?
what it is.
Yeah, because a member is eventually going to turn into money for them. So me helping make preaching materials for them, me helping make videos for them, that is all to make a profit, which, right, is a member at the end of the day. So it's like I'm helping this company to make a profit, but I'm not getting paid for it. Not only am I not getting paid for it, I have to pay them to work here. You know, it's crazy. So,
Yeah.
Yep.
So a lot of members don't know that though. A lot of members, when we would say the word upstairs, like they have no, like sometimes even I in my own little world, and Cory probably felt like that too, like we actually didn't realize how much members who even attended New Windsor have no idea what we do upstairs in that tech room. In that, you know, all they know when they hear tech team, they just think about people who run around with the cameras and like take care of the computer stuff. Like they have no idea the immense production that goes on behind the scenes and all the stuff that we're involved with. Like they have no idea how deep it goes.
Yeah.
And that's why they hear us speaking out and they're just like, that doesn't happen, you know?
What were you going to say, Cory?
I was going to say, after I was going to try to bring it back to the escape story.
Yes. Oh, sorry, I was
I don't want you to. I don't want you to go too far into the tech stuff because if we do a second,
there's just so many like intertwined things.
I know.
So escape,
11 years of material,
yeah. So it's so crazy that you would even think you have to escape this place. But yeah, so I made a group text. I texted my sisters and my cousin, and I was like, "Hey guys, like, so I want to leave my church." Which, by the way, like this is your family that knows you have been in this church for 11 years, that knows you have completely uprooted your life and kind of put them to the side and dedicated your life to this church. And like I said, I never fully let go of my family, which is something that of course the church would encourage you to do, right? To have no connection to your physical family. But I always kept somewhat of a relationship, even though I did, you know, still kind of leave them in the dust a little bit for a while. But I am so thankful for the support system that I had. So why I was speaking about God's timing before was because then my cousin in that group chat, she was like, yeah, I actually just got an apartment. and I have an extra room. So it's like my whole reason for, before not being able to leave this quickly was because I had nowhere to go. But now suddenly my cousin, right, who also happened to be an ex-member, and who I was so close to even before the church, like she has a place for me to stay. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is perfect. And then, I was like, I didn't care. I've done it before where I would drive up and down to work from Jersey to New Windsor and vice versa. So I was like, you know what? I can keep my New Windsor job until I get the heck out of here. My first step is just leaving New Windsor, like leaving the church. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's perfect. But now I have to think about how the heck to leave this place, right? Because my name is on the lease still for this apartment where there's just members living there. My name's on the lease. I can't be clear that I've lost faith in front of these people because I still can't afford that excommunication, like I need my time to plan. So now it came like down to planning how I was actually going to physically leave this place. So I still had to do about a good 2 weeks of prep, but it was such a weird feeling because these 2 weeks of prep, because by the time I texted Cory and told her, all right, I gotta get the heck out of here. It was like October, let's say 16th, right? And I was like, I gave myself November 1st because I was like, okay, if I have everything ready by November 1st, it's like, the start of the month where, I'm going to pay my rent. I already said I'm going to pay my rent for, the girls living there because I was still being very considerate of their situation too. I was like being very considerate. Like, I'm not going to give them any bad thing to say about me. I'm going to pay the rent for that past month so that they're okay. If they want to get another roommate. At the time we were living communally, we had I had 3 people living in that apartment, 3-bedroom apartment. So they were going to be fine. They didn't need my little portion of the rent, they love to do that. They love to stuff like 5, 6 people in one apartment so that they can pay less, because then more money to spend in the church. So we were lucky. We were one of the lucky ones. We only had 4 people living in a place because I refused to share a bedroom. So I knew that they were going to be okay if I left, So I started to make a list of everything I needed to do. You live very simply when you're in the church. I think I have more furniture than most members have when they live in the church, especially if you live the way that we did, which is as just single sisters living with other sisters. Like sometimes there's like 2 sisters that share one room. So if you can think about it, like 2 grown adults just sharing one room. So they'll have like twin beds, barely any furniture, just the clothes that they own for the church. They're really encouraged to get rid of any, like you're never home. So you don't have like decorations and you don't have like stuff that just belongs to you, like the most you have is like books of the church, and stuff like that. So I had a lot of furniture because I had my own room and stuff, but really I didn't have much. So I knew that I could be able to pack up and just go in one day. So I wanted to be very specific of how I do it and when. So I planned to do it on a Sabbath day, which was going to be insane because obviously the minute that you miss a Sabbath, and mind you, I've been a member for 11 years. I have never, ever missed a Sabbath. There's 3 services on a Sabbath day. You can't miss not even one because if you miss one, you're not a faithful member. I've never missed a feast. I've never missed a Tuesday service, nothing. I was in church Sunday to Saturday, like 7 days a week. I was in there, So not only do I have to now plan to pick up and leave, I'm also just being completely normal in front of these people, like in front of, right, the tech team, which is like, it's very like, it's a big deal to be in the tech team. Like, they don't let just anyone be there. Like you had to be a faithful member. So if at any point they saw that I was losing faith, I would have lost, I would have been taken out of that mission, which
demoted. Yeah,
like, and that would have been fine, like hers, right? But I knew that it was just not something I wanted to deal with at that time. You know what I mean? Because I was being very careful about how I left. So anyways, so I was trying to be very normal. Like I said, they were coming down on us hard for preaching after Cory left. So not only was I doing my full-time morning job, my full-time nighttime job for these people, but now we were preaching. They were requiring us, these people who already work for you 7 days a week, every single night till like 12 o'clock at night, finally they were a little lenient on time. we would have to preach for like an hour or two, which was not easy in New Windsor because it's not as populated as like some other places are. So yeah, so I had to go preaching while on the inside being completely done with this place. I no longer like felt anything towards God the Mother, like I no longer because before this time I had already been doing kind of like a little bit of deconstruction work within myself with the doctrine or with just God the Mother and God the Father. Like, like I was already, like, there were certain things that were keeping me in, like I said, about the end of the world and the Passover, Sabbath, things like that. But there were other things that I came to terms with that I knew I was ready to let go of. Certain teachings I knew I was ready to let go of. So it was so hard for me to sit there and, like, basically pretend that everything was fine. I'll never forget this. My last Thursday, also, I wanted to not be problematic for them because as my position that I had in the tech team, I would basically was like a project manager for like the printing and then for like the graphics. So I would like have like access to all these emails for all the requests that would come in from the entire East Coast. We would do projects that would come in from Korea, like so many things I knew I had access to. And I was like, I don't want to be problematic. I want them to know that I'm leaving, but I'm not going to be like this evil person that like, steals all your information and is going to post it. Like I made like an exit plan. Like if I was leaving a company too, like I prepared a message for certain sisters. And then I also prepared one for missionary Rebecca because she's like, that right hand of Pastor Daniel Lee. So I was in that message, I was telling her, I logged out of all the emails. I returned all my equipment that I have. I just wanted to like let them know that like I have no ill will for leaving. It's just time for me to go, So I had prepared all these. Like in those 2 weeks, I would cry every single day because I still was very hard decision for me. I would cry every single day. I was writing these messages to certain members because I wanted to be the one to message them because once they knew that I left, I knew that it was just a very short window of time that I had to be able to reach them from my own words. You know what I mean? Because I had no idea what they were gonna, if they were gonna block me right away or if they were gonna like hate me. Like I had no idea what it was gonna be. So I prepared like, personalized messages to each person that I was at least a little close to. For me planning to leave on the Sabbath was because that was really gonna be the only day that no one was in the house. And that I could get out, that I knew they weren't going to be able to come out and get me. You know what I mean? Because they're in service. And, for them, it's like, you have to be at service, like, 30 minutes before the service starts, you have to be there. You can't be on your phone. It's not like a regular church. Like, when you're in worship time, the rest of the world is closed off. You know what I mean? So that's why I decided to do it on a Saturday, worship day. So because I don't have a lot of stuff, a lot of furniture and stuff, all my stuff was really just contained in my one room. And then, a few kitchen stuff. So I would like little by little just kind of pack stuff. But I didn't have boxes because also my room had to stay open throughout the daytime because it was one of those rooms that like people had to walk through. So so I had to like be very strategic about how I was packing my stuff. So I would just use like my ottoman to like hide stuff in. I would like, I planned to just like all my drawers. I was just
again
use
not normal.
Boxes. Yeah, it's not normal. Like I was planning, like okay, this has to look like not like I can't just have a bunch of boxes sitting around for a week. Because
Right.
they're gonna be like, where the heck are you going? You know what I mean? Like no, like they could not know that I was leaving. So yeah, so I was able to just pack everything up inconspicuously in the church. I'm acting completely normal. I'm going preaching. I'm keeping all the services, I'm like completely disassociated in the services. Actually, I have a notebook where I took notes for one of the last services. And it was funny because in the notes, I was writing down everything that bothered me about the sermon. Like it was a general pastor sermon. And he was talking about, I think he was talking about like hell basically. And like all these different things. And I was writing down ways that it was a cult tactic. Like it was really insane, like to sit through that being fully like, what I call awake. I was awake, But I'll never forget my last Thursday, right? Because I left on a Saturday. So my last Thursday when I was going to like say goodbye to people without them knowing I was saying goodbye to them, you know, like I was like giving people my hugs and like, you know, giving things back. Like I had to give a laptop back to like one of the members that she had let me, you know, keep. And like she had told me she didn't want it back, but I was like, no, I'm gonna give it back to you. Because I was like, I know when she leaves, she's gonna be like, that girl took my laptop or something, you know? So I was like, I'm gonna give it back to you, so whatever. That Thursday, they called everybody in and they said, every gospel worker has to be here for this education that we're gonna have. So I had to go because I was like, if I don't go to this education, I'm not a gospel worker and they're gonna be on to me, you know? So I had to go.
I remember this. Actually, now I'm laughing because
I was struggling. And I was struggling because this education was about the Shincheonji cult.
Yeah, the Moonies.
So, no, not the Moonies.
It's actually a different group than Moonies. Yeah, Shincheonji is
the Moonies we knew about.
Very similar group.
Yes, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, but the Shincheonji, they're new, at least to the Church of God. So they're like sitting there talking about the tactics that this cult uses. And mind you, I'm like fully awake, like cognitively awake, realizing that this church is a cult. And everybody around me was like laughing, like, oh, that's so ridiculous. They're such a cult. Like, why do they do that? One of the tactics was like, they pretend to be university students and pretend to have like this organization that you join, but then it's actually a cult. And I'm like, we do that. Like, we literally do that. Like, I was like, you know, like in my head, like looking around, like, I
would pay big money to be able to have sat through that education seminar.
I literally, like, I remember somebody telling me to record it, but I was too, like, you know, I still had so much compassion toward. Yeah, I had too much compassion.
You did, yeah.
I was like, I can't.
Because by
that point, Cory was completely done.
Yeah, by that point we were talking daily, and I was like trying to help her, like, work through the actual escape thing. Yeah. And she's like, oh my God, there's education. I'm like, record it.
Oh man. Yeah, because we've actually had people from Shincheonji who were in that cult watch former members of the WMS, their testimonies, and then they end up leaving Shincheonji.
Wow.
Which is just that's how similar the cults are.
It's funny to think that they educate on this cult, and you're like,
that is.
That was the first time hearing about Shincheonji though, and like, sorry, I'm switching headphones here. And it was just crazy. They were going into detail. Oh, there was one point that they made about Shincheonji. Can you guys still hear me? Okay. Yep. There was one point that they made about it that I was like, you know, at this point, I had already started doing research about, like, you know, the history of the Church of God, like, you know, the actual history of the Church of God, not the one that they want to tell you about. And, like, you know, saying how, you know, Christ Ahnsahnghong, obviously he was part of the Seventh-day Adventists, and then he, you know, started his own church, and then how after he died, like Zhang Gil Jah and General Pastor, you know, now they have this church. But then, you know, there's that division of those other two churches, and I didn't know that at that time, like, I didn't know that, like, Ahnsahnghong's, like, children were in this other church that Zhang Gil Jah, like, broke from. And so they were explaining how in Shincheonji, like, how this man was just going from church to church. And then how when one leader dies, like, they were literally explaining Korean cults in general. So they're explaining how this leader died, so then the other leader, like, tries to take them the members, and then they start this other church. And then in my head, I'm like, literally, that's what happened. Like, even for me, it gave me clarity. I was like, because at that time I didn't have that clarity, that I was just like, wow, that's literally what happened with the Church of God. Like, how do we even know, right? Like, let's just say, because one truth I never struggled with, as embarrassing as it is to say now, especially for other people that are like, you know, when they hear about Christ Ahnsahnghong and the Church of God, they're just like, oh, that was a cult. Like, you know, like, I hate when people say that, because they're like, oh, how did you not know that was a cult? Like, you know, it's like, listen, it's harder than that. But one of the things that I never really had an issue with was really all the prophecies about Christ Ahnsahnghong, you know? If anything, the prophecies regarding God the Mother were a little tougher, because it really felt like those verses are, like, a little more, like, forced, you know? Yeah. Whereas for Ahnsahnghong, they have, like, several verses and several, like, physical testimony about why he's the one. that is the second coming Christ, you know? So it's like, even if you doubted everything else, but you still believed Christ Ahnsahnghong for some reason, right? But then you look at the history of the Church of God, it's like, okay, when this church separated that way, like, how do you even know that everything that Zhang Gil Jah is saying is true about this church division? You know what I mean? Like, you know, you go back to hearing about how Christ Ahnsahnghong never said he was Christ and all these other things. Like, you know, it's like, wow, they really, really did exactly what these other Korean cults do, which is, oh, this leader died, now we're in charge, you know? So it was like, wow, but it was so sad. It was really, really hard for me to sit through that, you know, knowing what I knew and feeling what I felt and looking around me, like everyone's just laughing and mocking. Yeah, like just knowing things. It was like, wow, like we're really super delusional while we're in there. Like, it was so hard for me to sit through that because I wanted to just stand up and be like, that's us. We are the same. Like, you know? But
can you imagine if you had?
Oh my God. Yeah, that would have been so terrible. But no, I had to stick to my escape plan. 2 days down. I literally had a written calendar of my 2 weeks of what I had to do each day, pack each day, prepare each day. And then that Thursday was my 2 days down. Like, that's it. It was my last Friday. Friday, I knew I wasn't going to go to the church. You know, Friday was like preparation day. And that was one of the days that you kind of could not show up depending on the size of your church. You know, our church happened to be a big church. So if you're not there on a Friday, it's not the end of the world, you know? So I was like, all right, I can afford to stay home Friday and finish my packing and just close my door up and continue. Now I can do some of my heavy packing because I can keep my door closed and no one's going to come in here. No one's going to see anything, whatever. So then Saturday comes, Saturday morning. And I had called, you know, had made this whole exit plan with my sisters, like texting them, like, listen, this is when you're going to show up at the U-Haul. Do not come to the house before this time. Do not come to the parking lot at this time, because if they see you, you know, like, I can't afford anything to not go according to plan, you know? So I even told them exactly what time to come. But it was hilarious because that morning, so like I said, everything is very, you know, lawful in that church, where it's like you had to be there 30 minutes before service. Like, if you're late for service, you're like super unfaithful or like something's wrong with you, you know? So I'm banking on that because, mind you, I live with all the sisters who are like gospel workers. So I'm like, okay, they have to be, you know, we live 10, 15 minutes from the church. So you have to be out of here by, you know, 40 minutes before the service time, which is, I guess, let's say 10 a.m. because I don't remember what time service they were at that time. And so at this time, I'm like waiting. I'm having an anxiety attack because there's this one member who was still in the house. And I didn't understand why. So it was hilarious because it was not normal. Like, literally, you cannot be late for service.
So this was during service time?
Not yet. Like, you're still in that 30-minute window mark.
Okay.
Like, you know, like, let's say service starts, they should be gone. So service starts at 10 o'clock, right? 10 a.m. during the fall time. 10 a.m. You have to be sitting down by 9:30. You know, anything, you could still come in like 9:45, and that's okay. But really, you should be there no later than 9:45. So if you're trying to get there on time, you should have left the house by 9:20, 9:30, you know? So this girl, she's still in the house, and I'm like freaking out because I'm like, why is she still here? This is not normal. And I'm starting to judge her. Like, girl, aren't you a gospel worker? Like, aren't you supposed to be at the church at a certain time? Like, I'm freaking out because it's cutting into my planning time. Because so I plan to exit, like, have all my stuff in the U-Haul and leave. I had to do it before the service was over because I knew that someone like me who didn't lose faith in their eyes, right, was, you know, in the tech team, was a faithful member. Me not coming to that first service, they were going to come look for me immediately once that service was over. And first service is usually only an hour long. And then I kind of tied in like announcement time and all this stuff. So I was like, listen, like, I need every minute I can get. So this girl was not leaving. So I started gaslighting myself because I'm like, what if she's trying to leave the church and she's waiting for me to leave first? Like, you know, I was just like freaking out. Like, what do I do? Why doesn't she leave? But finally she left. But
that would have been awesome.
Yeah, that would have been crazy though. Because then we're both just like by the door. Like, is she leaving yet? Because I gotta go. But yeah, so finally she left, And I was able to like go, because I still had stuff on the outside of my room that I had to pack up that belonged to me, so I had to take it. And so anyways, my sisters came, I got the U-Haul, I got everything packed. We literally packed within an hour. I had set a timer for those messages that I prepared for like those members and for missionary Rebecca. I put literal like timestamps of when I had to send those, because I knew that I would have to text. The reason why I wanted to, people were asking me, why do you want to tell them? Like, just leave. I was like, no, I have to, because I know they're going to come looking for me. And I was like, this will buy me some time, you know, because if I tell them that I left, you know, now they have to go discuss it with pastor or whoever, right? They can't just come after me. They have to now go tell pastor, hey, this is happening right now. Tiffany left the church. We don't know what's going on. Do we go get her? Like, you know, they're going to go have to like ask him for permission about what to do. So I knew that was going to buy me more time. So I had planned even down to what time I was going to text these people, everything. And sure enough, I texted everybody, packed up my last thing into the U-Haul, and we left. And I'm driving. There's a Walmart like 5 minutes from the church and like 10 minutes from where I was living. And we parked to like, you know, get water and stuff. And right then and there, everybody starts calling me. I'm getting all these calls. I'm getting all these text messages, and I'm just like sobbing, like crying my eyes out in this U-Haul truck, and like, you know, just crying. And I didn't want to answer anybody. I was like, I think I texted like Michelle Rebecca back, like, I can't talk to you right now. Like, you know, I was like, I'm sorry. Like, I was like saying I'm sorry, but I was like, I can't, you know, I can't talk to you right now. And yeah, so they definitely did try to, you know, call me, reach out to me. And two of them went to go to the house, even though I told them, like, I literally told them, like, no, like, I'm already driving to Jersey, you know, I can't talk right now, I'm driving. And they were like, oh, we're outside of your apartment right now. Because, you know, we thought you were still here. So, like, you know, I'm glad that I planned it the way that I did, because they definitely did go to the apartment to go see me despite me saying that I was gone. So I was like, dang, if I would have ran into them, who knows, right? Like, what would have happened? Because you're such in like a fragile state of mind at that time, you know, because like, yes, you maybe you did come to terms with that it's a cult. Maybe you did come to terms with, okay, this is not the place of salvation, but you still have like this internal battle, right? Because imagine 11 years of your life, 11 years of what you believed in. That's one thing I want to mention, because for them, like for Cory, when they were giving all those services about these people who lived their life for 10 plus years and then they left, what they love to say is, oh, it showed they never had faith to begin with. It shows they never believed. And it's like, how could you say that? Like, would I have spent 11 years of my life for something I didn't believe in? Would I have left my family behind for something I didn't believe in? Right. Like, oh, I didn't believe in this, but I gave you my entire existence for the past 11 years. Like, are you literally insane? Like, you know, like, that's so disrespectful of people to say that you never had faith. Like, if I didn't have faith, I would have left within the first year of me getting baptized. You know what I mean? Like, the crap that we did was because we had faith, you know? The things we did to each other, like, you know, even despite the relationship that me and Cory had, like she said, like, you know, we didn't know if either one of us were going to rat each other out for something. And it wasn't like you were ratting each other out because of like malicious intent. It was like you were literally like, oh my gosh, this might affect their salvation, so I have to tell this person what's going on with this person. Like, you know, you never felt like you had someone you could really confide in. And that was really one of the reasons why I couldn't tell anybody that I was going through those faith struggles. You know, that's why the rumors, yeah. And then it would be like, then I would have to deal with those repercussions instead of them just trying to help you, they would just be trying to, like, you know, fit you into this box, and where you're just going to be shunned and like shamed and judged, and not everybody's really ready to deal with that mentally, you know. And I think a lot of part about me feeling like that was because I saw what Cory went through, you know, like I saw what they did to her, and I was like, I don't want that. You know, I was like, I don't want to go through that. Like, I'm not ready to go through that. Like, you know, I'm so, you know, I'm thankful that she was strong enough to go through that, you know. I had no idea really how bad it was until I read like those text messages that she had posted on her page, that I was like, wow, like that was really, really bad what she went through when they, you know, didn't let her keep the Passover and all these things. Like, you know, like I just wasn't ready to deal with that. But Yeah, they try to say that you don't have faith, and it's like, how dare you? Like would I cry, for someone's salvation, even just what, like 6 months before I left, like a year before I left, like cry for them, praying all the time, like praying that I'm doing the right thing, like all these things, like we really do have faith. Like you really you had us, you know what I mean? You had us. Like stop trying to like diminish people's reasons for leaving. They try to just turn it on the member without looking at themselves. Like, no, you're the reason I left. Don't try to just take the scapegoat way out of like saying, oh, she only left because Cory took her out. No, I left because of everything that led up to this moment, right? What you've done to my life, what you've done to other people's life, how you led your church, right? How you're doing things that are just not like biblical, like so many bad things that I saw. Those are my reasons for leaving, and I hope that they were clear in this video, because I know I talk a lot, but like there are so many other reasons, and they all tie back to you, the organization, this church. Stop trying to make it seem like, oh, they left because they're a demon. You know what I mean? Like they like to take the easy way out of everything, and it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
So at what point then, like I'm guessing in terms of the timeline, had Cory shared her story on Great Light Studios at this point? Was that interview already out? Had you seen that? And what, I guess I'm just curious to know, like, how did you watch that at that time, and what were your thoughts?
No,
about
so
that?
she filmed it while I was in, but by the time it was released, I was already out.
You were already out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So we watched it. I remember watching it at my cousin's house with her, which is crazy, because I want to give a little shout out to my cousin, because like, again, the church likes to think that they don't affect people in any kind of way, because that's the thing, is people leave in different ways. Like my cousin is someone who left the church and kind of still believed, you know what I mean? Like she never got to have that closure of like, oh, it's a cult, just because of the way she left. So it's like so many people leave for different reasons. And she was someone who also got to have closure by me leaving. Like she didn't get to like really come to terms with the trauma that she went through in that place in the short amount of years that she was there. I was there for 11 years, but she was there for like, I guess maybe 5 years, 4 years, which is still a lot, and she had just been living with all that trauma inside with no one to talk to about it, like she couldn't even talk to me about it, because I'm on the inside. So I would have just been like judging her, or like, taking the church's side for whatever she felt. So it's like, wow, like, like it really made me see, like, hearing Cory's story, everything that she went through, even all the psychological like damage that it does to you, like mental toll that it takes on you. Like I was able to see that in real life, I was like, wow, I'm not crazy, like I did go through something drastic. Like look what it did to my cousin. Like, like look how she's still dealing with repercussions of giving her life to that place, and she left 6 years ago. You know what I mean? Like it's really crazy.
Yeah.
They really do mess with you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I definitely think your reasons for leaving, the issues you saw, the things that you struggled with, I think you did a great job at communicating those, and it's very, very, very clear in the things that you've shared. I guess, I have so many questions that I would want to ask, and I'll give Cory a moment too to ask questions. But one thing I'm curious about, just having been out now for 8 months, around 8 months, 9 months, something like that. What are, I guess, like what has that journey been like since leaving, the healing journey, and like what are things that, do you feel like there are things you're still struggling with, and what, like, how are you dealing with those things that might still be internal battles?
Yeah, so I'm thankful that I was able to come to terms with like deconstructing the doctrine for myself, because I feel like I was able to not be a slave to that after leaving, because I feel like that's one thing that really, really like can mess with people for a long time after leaving, where even it brings them back, like I was able to really, really like do my work and my research to realize, like, no, I don't need the Sabbath. No, I don't need the Passover. Like, that is not the ultimate truth of the Bible. Like, things like that. I know you're like a Christian, in the Christian faith, but I deconstructed Christianity just in general for myself at some point, to kind of be able to detach from that, to like let go of that guilt of like, this fear of like hell and all these things. Because if not, that would have really kept me in like a bad mental place, I feel like, just because of the way hell is used in that kind of place. But I feel like my biggest support system was definitely my family. I'm so grateful for. Like, they, you have this fear, and that's one thing I don't want to get emotional, but I think people have a fear of leaving because you give up so much to be there, that maybe they feel like, where am I going to go? Is my family going to, accept me? I've hurt so many people by, pushing them to the side. Maybe, I can't leave this place, or even, I feel like some people don't want to leave because they have this sense of pride, like, dang, like, I went against my own family for years, telling them, no, this is the truth. And now I'm going to look so stupid coming back saying, oh, actually, it's not the truth. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that kind of might hold people. But I feel like I'm so thankful that my family just like accepted me back, like they were waiting for me to come back. And it was like I never left, I dealt with a lot of guilt. Sorry. And this is why I say I get mad at myself, because I overthink, because I know that there are people out there thinking, well, the church never says don't visit your family. Actually, the church says visit your family, but it's not true. Like I literally remember they did have a sermon one time that was like, oh, take care of your parents, like go visit your parents, right? And at that time I was in New Windsor, and I was struggling with the fact that I wasn't able to see my mom whenever the heck I wanted to, like I wasn't able to like care about her or want to see her without being looked at as physical, or without being looked at as like you're faithless or something. Like, why do you care about your physical mother? That's just your physical mother, So I had asked, I was like, see, like, and the sermon was given by Zhang Gil Jah herself, by God the Mother herself, saying visit your families. And I had brought that up to a leader at the time. And I said, if Mother says visit your families, like, why can't we visit her? Like, like why is it a bad thing if I want to go visit my mom, or like, be there for my mom? And like, literally I was told like, oh, you know what she means by that. Like, she was just talking to the people that like are babies, like spiritual babies, like people who don't understand. She's like, mature children understand what she means by that. So, and then at that point, I'm like, what the heck? Like, so even you're telling me that what God herself, right? Because we thought she was God. We're like, what God herself is telling us to do, you're telling us to do the opposite. So it's like, there's members in the church that really, there are some that live their life however they want. But when you're like a gospel worker, or like a faithful member that's supposed to like, you really feel like your salvation is tied to the work that you do for the church. You do what everything that they say. You live the way they want you to live, because you're not doing it, because the church said, right? Because even our families are like, oh, you can't miss one service. No, like, it's not the church telling me to do this. It's God. Like, I can't miss a service because God is telling me not to miss a service. I can't, not go preaching because God is telling me I have to go preaching. Like, like there are things that you did because they were directly tied to your salvation, So no, I couldn't visit my family whenever I wanted to. And that was a guilt that I had to live with when I got back to my family. I left around November. My cousin, who used to be a member, she was so surprised because I right away celebrated Christmas that year, because the church does not celebrate Christmas and they demonize it. And she was like, how were you able to celebrate Christmas? She was like, I took years before I was able to celebrate Christmas again. And I was like, yeah, I was just ready, because I realized it's about the family, it's about the family. Forget the origins of this stuff. Who cares? Like, the church celebrates other stuff that has pagan origins, like they just pick and choose which ones they do and don't want to do. But at those family gatherings, like Christmas, even Thanksgiving, like I would look around and I would literally cry because I had so much guilt, because, I had nieces and nephews that some of them were born before I went to the church. and some of them were born while I was in the church, and I missed out on so much of their lives. Sorry. They're just like, my family is so important to me. And I was the type of person before the church that was like a really big presence in my family. You know what I mean? Like, I was always there, always, at the gatherings, always like leading a gathering or something, And so looking around at everything I missed, or even relationships that were formed while I was gone, because we have a very mixed family, I was just sad for a long time and guilt. And sometimes I still talk about it. And sometimes my family gets mad at me. Like, it's okay. Like, stop thinking like that. Like you're here now, but it's hard to not think about those times, But I'm so thankful that they were just ready to have me back. Nobody made me feel like never once did they say anything about the church, like saying, see, we told you it was bad, or something like that. Like, obviously there were times in the past years that they're like, we know it's a cult, you know what I mean? Like, like some people were so aware of certain things before you, but they really didn't give me a hard time about that. So I feel like if anyone's thinking that way, thinking that they're embarrassed to go back to their family, thinking that, that they're just embarrassed to leave the church because they already spent so much of their time there. Like, don't feel like that at all. And even if you do want to stay being a member there, right? Let's say you don't want to leave the church because you believe the Sabbath, you believe God the Mother, all these things. Like, don't give up your family, because what I realized is that my family was there right away. My mother was there right away, but no one from the church was. You know what I mean? Like, they had no problem cutting me off, even people who we considered to be very close friends of ours. Like, once they thought that Cory was like my reason for leaving, the people just literally blocked me. And these were people, like I said, that we would even do our little rebellious things together with, like we went to Dorney Park, which is like an amusement park, together. We took our spa days together. Like, we did all these like little things that were just like enjoying ourselves because we were trying to just, be happy while we were in there, but still abide by their rules. We still made sure that our little shenanigans were over by the preaching time so that we could go back to church at night and preach, or do whatever we had to do. And people like that, they just cut you off. Like, the church does not care about you. You know what I mean? So don't give up your actual family for them, because they love to say, right? Like, this is your real family, your spiritual family. This is your spiritual mother. Physical mother is nothing, right? But no, like, one thing that I used to really always talk about when I first left was how crazy it was to me, how much they bank on like the sacrifice of the mother, and how she's so heartbroken, right, by her children not coming to the church, or if her children are losing faith. God the Mother is so heartbroken, and she's so sad that her children don't come to the church. And then I'm looking at the actual mothers who are like devastated that they haven't seen their children because they're in this church for the past 10 years, 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is. And they no longer can see their kid because, they're in church all the time and they're told, right? Like, the spiritual mother is more important than the physical mother. And I started thinking, like, wow, they really get you to feel this way towards the spiritual mother. But once you're like leave, or like, you start to leave or something, like, she doesn't care about you. But the one who did care for you every day, the one who really was heartbroken that they didn't have you anymore, was your actual mother. I used to literally have an anxiety, like this fear of like, if something happens to my mother, like, my mother is healthy and beautiful and young, like, nothing's wrong with her. But I had this feeling of like, if something happens to my mother while I'm in this church, I am never going to forgive them. Because you're not allowed to go to funerals. You're not even like, I'd had never have time to go visit my mom all the time. And I was like, I knew that if something were to happen to my mom, even if she got like a sickness or something where, she had to be looked after or something, and I didn't have the time to be there for her, like, that was always in the back of my mind. Like, if that ever happens, how am I going to be there for my mom? You know what I mean? Like, little things like that just kind of destroy you little by little. but yeah, like, so being out now and free, like, I'm just happy to have my family back, like, you know, and they're happy to have me back. And there's even been so many gatherings that we've been able to have, like, if nothing ever happened, you know, like, we're able to, like, kind of have, like, this big giant, like, get-togethers and stuff like that, and everything feels great. But, you know, that's something that I definitely can't say, oh, I could do that while I was in church. Like, no. They like to make it seem like you can do that nowadays, but no, I could never just be like, yeah, I'm gonna go be with my family today. That was seen as, like, so faithless, you know. Other than that, I would say I'm trying to get my financial life together, because one thing that me and Cory talk about regularly, and with our other bestie, is, like, it's so interesting because in the church you really have no sense of future. Like, your future is just the church. So that's one thing I want to mention to people too. If you want to stay in that church, if you want to continue being a member of that church, by all means do it. But you still have to do things like prepare for retirement. Like, you still, like, don't feel bad to do things like, you know, own property, or, like, you know, just make your plans for your life. Like, in the church, they would call that a safety net. But it's like, you're going to regret so much that you don't actually live a regular, like, you know, prepare a regular normal life for your future when you realize that that place is all false. Because I feel like that's their biggest crime in that place, is to not only steal people's youth, but also, you know, like, not prepare them for the real world. Like, you know, like, obviously they really, really think that they're the truth, and they really, really think that, right, the world is going to end and everyone is going to go to their version of heaven. But it's like, when some of those members realize that that's not the truth, and they've already wasted so much of their life in there and not prepared for their physical future, it's so hard, you know? So that's what I'm dealing with now, is, like, I never had to think about stuff like retirement, because I didn't even, you don't, when you're in that church, you don't think that you're even going to get there, you know? Like, you don't think about, like, just preparing for, you know, your future and stuff like that. So, you know, that's an interesting part of being out. It's like, oh, wow, I never had to think about being old before, or I never had to think about death. Like, you know, there's so many things you never had to, like, think about while you're in there. But yeah, but other than that, I think I'm really happy where I'm at. I say I'm really thankful also for the little ex-member community. Like, I feel like a lot of people who left maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago didn't have this. You know, they didn't have, like, you know, being able to reach out to somebody like Cory, or being able to watch these videos and feel like, wow, this other person went through what I went through. Or, like, you know, even through social media, a lot of members connect, ex-members connect. And it just gives you that sense of community, because obviously that's something that you lose from the church, right? Is a community of people who are like-minded, like you. So now you are able to have people that, of course, we're not all on the same paths of life, right? Like, even people have different faiths and things like that. But we all went through something together that only each other understands. So it's really helpful to have that support system as well, I feel like. So if anybody's thinking about leaving, you can reach out to Cory. You can reach out to me. My Instagram is public. Just kidding. But, like, you know, I'm so ready to just embrace anyone who, like, needs help. You know what I mean? Because we've all been there. So I'm thankful for that little community as well.